You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Day 2 of our fund drive. It's Friday. It's our first Friday of our fund drive. Please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution to Free Speech TV. Help keep this network going, help keep this network alive, help keep this program on this network. All of these things are absolutely necessary if we're to move forward. Moving forward would be a nice thing. In fact, Free Speech TV just announced they're rolling out a new show, Lisa Gar's Aware Show. I was a guest on Lisa Gar's show, when we lived in Vermont, like in 2003, 2004, right around that time. A number of times, in fact, I was on her show. She had me on as the author of books that I'd written. Does a great program, and is going to do a great job here on Free Speech TV. There's a lot. They have built out a lot of great programming. It's remarkable, and they've done it on this little tiny shoestring of a budget. The budget for this entire television network is less than the budget of any one of the one-hour programs on MSNBC or CNN, for example. The entire network runs on this relatively small budget, just a few million bucks. I think I think it's in the neighborhood of around $4 million a year, which is, when you think about it, frighteningly small, and yet they pull it off. They really do, and we got it. We got Free Speech TV on Dish, and we got Free Speech TV on Direct, and we got Free Speech TV all over the internet, and you can watch these programs, and it's remarkable. We're in over 40 million homes directly through Dish and Direct, and theoretically in billions of homes via the internet. So Free Speech TV is really doing something, and doing something consequential. You get that from watching this show, right? When we take calls from listeners, and they're literally all over the country watching Free Speech TV. In fact, one of the cool things about Free Speech TV, if you're concerned about red states and you're concerned about the message getting through in areas where people are heavily watching Fox so-called news, or just, red state areas where there's very few progressives, in a lot of the rural areas in the United States, there is no cable TV because it's expensive to bring cable out to rural areas. And so the cable companies go, we'll not do that. And so people instead have Dish or Direct, the two cable systems, or the two satellite systems, excuse me. And the consequence of that is that they can get Free Speech TV, and in red areas, in red parts of red states. And that's why we get so many callers. It's one of the reasons why we get so many callers into this program from Oklahoma and Wyoming and Missouri and rural Idaho, and fill in the blank, right? Texas. Yeah, we have radio stations in a lot of those places, but not so much in the red states, actually. And it's because of Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV is having a big impact. Free Speech TV is actually changing political dialogue in the United States. And Free Speech TV needs your help and support right now, 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Fair and Slightly Unbalanced, that's one of the slogans for our program, bumper sticker. With a $72 gift, you get an unautographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, my new book. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. With the slogan, "Democracy begins with you." With a $500 gift, you have your choice. We're going to do an online virtual meet and greet. It'll be a, invitation only to people who've donated $500 or more, and we will meet online, and I will answer your questions in real time. Or with a $500 gift, if you happen to be in the D.C. area on June the 10th, the hour before I do the book signing at Busboys and Poets, I will be doing a meet and greet just for our $500 donors in Washington, D.C. So that's also with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. We get people together every couple times a month, maybe, and it's neat. In fact, we've got some regulars who I've gotten to know and I really like, and it's a marvelous thing. I really enjoy it. And I think the people who come do too. And you get to sit in the studio and see how the program's done, and meet Nate and Sean and Joyce and Nick, and it's just a hoot. So those are the gifts, or the premiums, as it were. But the important thing is supporting a television network that is making change, a television network that is actually promoting a relatively unadulterated progressive perspective. Nobody owns this network. Nobody owns the shows on this network beyond the individual hosts. There's not some giant corporation in the wings or some government that owns the whole thing. It's exactly what you see. Here we are, right? Program. Stephanie owns her. Friday, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak, whatever it may be for you. Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. It is Anything Goes Friday, and yesterday afternoon our new phone system arrived, and our engineer, the brilliant Dave Fulton, came over and installed it, and it seems to be working. We tested it this morning, but feel free to call. 202-808-9925 is our phone number, and we'll see what happens. A couple of stories that I wanted to share with you that are in the news, but on Anything Goes Friday, of course, we can talk about anything you'd like. You ever hear of Kim Hyok Chol? Probably a name you're not familiar with. He was the guy who was one of the closest advisors to North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. And he was the guy who was the liaison with the Trump administration who set up the summit between Trump and Kim in Vietnam. And he is also apparently the guy who was executed by firing squad a couple of weeks ago. Apparently because the Trump-Kim summit went south. And, we know that this is, I talked about this yesterday, this is Trump's negotiating strategy. I think he's been doing it with real estate forever, is, break things and scream and yell and all that kind of stuff. And after having broken things, then you run in and you fix things, right? It's like the example that I mentioned yesterday when with one of our guests was, you go back to the real estate. This is probably how Trump's daddy built his real estate empire in, was it Queens or Bronx? And I believe that this is probably how Donald Trump built his real estate empire in New York. You go in, you want to buy up a block of housing, for example, or office space or whatever it may be, so that you can tear everything down and build a new building there, right? So you go in and you got a whole bunch of different people who own properties on this block. You're trying to clear the block, and one of the people says, no, I ain't going to sell. And so you just come down on them like a ton of bricks. They're sitting on a property that's, say, worth $1 million, and they say, no, I'm not going to sell. And you say, well, I'll offer you $1.1 million. No, I'm not going to sell. And then Trump comes in and says, okay, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to sue you for interfering with my business. You're going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars defending the lawsuits. I'm going, and I'm going to threaten you with this, that, and the other thing, and you'll never have a business here. And quack, 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 quack. And at some point, the person that he's, quote, negotiating with says, okay, screw it. It's not worth the trouble. I give up. I walk away. And you look at the history of Trump's business relationships, and that's basically how it's always worked. And now he's trying to do this to countries. And, we'll see how it works out. Anyhow, there's a lot of other news stuff, a lot of other stuff in the news today, but let's see how our phones are working here, Sean. Cliff in Canyon Country, California. Cliff, you are on the air.
Hi, Fred.
Hey, Cliff. Hey, I can hear you. You can hear me. It's amazing. It's a beautiful Friday. So what's up?
I don't like to play the victim, Tom. I've kind of learned how to handle myself through the years, but don't play the fool. But I feel victimized, and I think most other humans on Earth are victimized from these massive chemical companies. The Monsantos and the DuPonts, the Bayers. Their harmful products have gotten into almost every human's bloodstream without our knowledge, without our consent. The glyphosate situation, the GMOs. What's that chemical that DuPont used for Teflon? PFOAs or something.
Right. Yeah.
It's supposedly in all of our bloodstreams.
And now there's concern about nanoparticles, too. This is the new big thing that people are freaking out about, including titanium dioxide, which is used as a whitening agent. If you look at your supplements, if you take a pill that's got a white coating on the outside, it'll say titanium dioxide. And these are like microscopic nanoparticles. And there's increasing evidence that this kind of stuff gets into your bloodstream. It's used to whiten foods, titanium dioxide, that it gets into your bloodstream. And then from there, it can accumulate in places like the liver, the kidneys, and there's even speculation it might cross the blood-brain barrier. I mean, it's freaky. There's 80,000 chemicals out there that are in. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands, but 80,000 chemicals that in the big category of chemicals, fewer than a couple thousand of them have ever been tested for human safety.
Right, and there's about the couple of lawsuits that have been awarded millions for these people that got the glyphosate, and there's supposedly thousands of other lawsuits in the pipe, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm still seeing TV commercials for Roundup, by the way, how they're saying how great it is. So,
yep.
But do you think that these lawsuits could help bring these monopolies down, or how else can they be held responsible?
Well, I don't think it's going to bring them. I don't think it's going to bring the monopolies down. That requires some sort of structural change in the way that we police corporations. But it's going to take a chunk out of their profits. I mean, since Bayer acquired Monsanto, their stock has dropped by 30%. So
I'm happy.
Yeah,
happy for that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big mistake. Monsanto, the owners of Monsanto got out while the getting was good. And, knowing obviously that these glyphosate lawsuits were coming down the road, and Bayer's got to be feeling pretty badly burned, but they're a German company, so, American investors probably don't feel all that bad about it. But yeah, I get it, Cliff, and I share your concern. And there's some great people, the public interest research groups, the PIRGs, P-A-R-G, are doing some of the very best work on this. But there's a whole bunch of them. Cliff, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you, and I appreciate it. Irene in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Hey, Irene, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to talk about Mueller's statement that he made the other day. There was a sentence that he said in that statement that I have not heard anybody make any kind of comment about, but I think is a very revealing statement as to why he was up there and sort of stumbling in his words sometimes and seemed nervous. And what he said was, no one has told me whether I can or should testify or speak further about this matter. Now, when Barr was asked if it was okay for Mueller to testify, Barr said, no, that's fine with me, doesn't bother me. So he's saying he wasn't told that he could do that. And secondly, the sentence itself is awkward. Why would anyone tell you that you should or could testify without at least saying or said that I should not or could not testify?
Right.
And I think he was told by Barr, you must not testify. And that's why he quit his job and did that 8-minute speech. And and it's in that sentence.
I think that's entirely possible, and there's some really interesting, over the weekend, I guess, maybe it's tonight, I'm not sure exactly when it's supposed to air, I believe it's ABC, but Barr has said, we assessed, This is a quote from the Deputy Attorney General and I conducted a careful review of the report with our staffs and legal advisors. And while we disagreed with some of the legal theories and felt that many of the episodes discussed in the report would not constitute obstruction as a matter of law, we didn't rest our decision on that. We took each of the 10 episodes and we assessed them against the analytical framework that had been set forward by the special counsel. And you know, it was not sufficient to establish that the president committed obstruction of justice offense. This is just naked propaganda, is what David Korn is calling it, and I think he's absolutely right. And it's going to be, you know, broadcast by one of our big television networks. And, you know, Bill Barr is lying and covering up, as he did for George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992, around Iraq-gate and around Iran-Contra, as he did for Reagan, as he did for, frankly, for the CIA when he was their lawyer with regard to the assassination of Kennedy. I mean, you know, Lamar was on here talking about that earlier. So, yeah, you know what? Go ahead.
Which is kind of funny because all of these congressmen are saying, "Well, I'm so surprised that Barr would be doing this. He has such a stellar reputation." No, he doesn't have a stellar reputation. It goes back years.
Right.
Where he has. I'm not going to tell you what happened in this report. I'm going to summarize it for you, and I'm going to tell you the summary of it. And then after those records are released, because they're not classified anymore, or FOIA request or whatever, it was totally different than what he said in his.
Well, probably his biggest lie was when he lied to Congress. When George Herbert Walker Bush was doing poorly in the polls and he needed a boost, and when Manuel Noriega was threatening to spill the beans on some of the Iran-Contra stuff that he was involved with, he was, you know, doing the money laundering end of it. Bush Sr. got freaked out and said, "We got to take down Noriega." And he went to Bill Barr and said, you know, give me some legal justification for this. And the Office of Legal Counsel had written a memo saying, no, you cannot go into a foreign country. You cannot invade a foreign country and take down its leader and arrest them and bring them to the United States. It's against the law. It's against treaties. Bill Barr goes before Congress and says, it's just fine. We looked into this, and it's just fine. Go ahead and do it. And so George Herbert Walker Bush, as president, invaded Panama, killed hundreds of civilians, arrested Noriega, brought him to the United States, put him in lockdown in his own little prison. In fact, Lamar and I drove by it once when we were, we didn't stop in and visit. You couldn't do that, but we drove by it once when we were down in Florida interviewing some of the people from the Bay of Pigs invasion, and it was just to get Noriega out of the way. Bill Barr lied about the legality of that. The actual memo didn't surface for another decade, which is what Bill Barr keeps planning on. So I'm with you, Irene. Irene, thanks a lot for the call. This is absolutely bizarre stuff, and we need to be paying attention to it, because the guy who is right now our Attorney General has spent his entire career lying on behalf of Republicans, and doing so because if you dig into this, and I'll rant about this at more length next week, but because of his, quote, Christian faith. Seriously, Bill Barr is one of those guys. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
By those guys, I'm talking about people who believe in the noble lie that if you lie to promote, a position, that's just fine. And welcome back. Oliver in New York City. Hey, Oliver, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Yeah, I want to ask you a question, just in case you know or someone you interview or calls up. Letitia James, the Attorney General for New York?
Yes.
She has subpoenaed Deutsche Bank for Trump's tax records.
Well, not specifically Trump's tax records. What she's subpoenaed Deutsche Bank for are the records of his loans and financial transactions with Deutsche Bank. Now, part of that might be that he submitted tax records by way of saying, here's proof that I'm creditworthy. We don't know. But yeah, but I think broadly that's what you're talking about, Oliver.
Yeah, well, okay. But if she does and receives them, let's say his tax records,
right?
Does she have the legal right to submit them or provide those to the Congress? That's my question.
Yeah, I believe she does. And as I recall, the state of New York was, they just changed some legislation so that Trump can actually be charged with state crimes after he leaves office. And I think they might have enacted some legislation expanding her, or at least the governor's abilities, but I'm not 100% certain on whether it passed or not, Oliver. But she could, I mean, there's a lot of ways that she could get this out, and leaking is the easiest.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of things possible. Oliver, thanks a lot for the call. Great to hear from you. Graham in Kalama, Washington. Hey, Graham, what's up?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, or is it Kalama?
Hey.
Kalama.
It's Kalama.
Kalama, thank you.
Hey, Tom, I'm still confused about what to say around the water cooler. Last thing I want is for Trump to go back home to New York with all of his family and himself pardoned. And all he'd have to worry about is the state of New York. And so I don't know what's best, whether or not we should investigate, impeach but not convict, impeach but convict.
Here's the strategy, Graham, that the Democrats are pursuing, and a few of them are saying it out loud. Nancy Pelosi is not, but this is what she's doing too. What they know is that the Clinton impeachment is not a good guide to this. They finally figured that out. I mean, it took them 2 years, but they finally figured that out. The Nixon impeachment is the guide to it. When Sam Ervin, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee back in 1973-74, when Sam Ervin first started holding hearings on the Watergate burglary, on the break-in, on the original crime essentially of Watergate, only a small, and it was obvious that Richard Nixon played some role in that, but nobody knew what the role was. At that point in time, 17% of Americans were in favor of impeachment at that point in time. By 6 weeks later, I believe it was 6 weeks, might be 8 or 9 weeks, but within a couple of months, the majority of Americans, over 67%, were in favor of impeachment because they had seen this spectacle on TV. And this is what the Democrats are trying to do, is they're trying to recreate that spectacle on TV. And the Trump administration is trying to prevent that by telling every single witness who might be part of that spectacle, you may not do this. And ultimately, eventually, this is, whether Congress can or cannot hold these hearings is going to get decided. Whether it's going to get decided by the courts, whether it's going to get decided by brute force, I don't know. I wish the Democrats would be more aggressive in it, but this is where they're going. They're trying to do it the way that they did with Nixon, and I think it's the right way to do it. We'll be right back. Welcome back. 22 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Nicholas down in San Cristobal, Mexico, and moderating in our YouTube chat room. Hey, hi. Nicholas, what's up?
How are you, Tom?
Great.
Good to talk to you again.
Back at you.
Sorry if you hear some barking in the background, some of the 5 street rescues. A couple of good things south of the border and some updates. This falls under the category of things you don't believe can happen, but then sometimes do when miracles happen.
Sure.
The new Secretary of the Environment, appointed by AMLO, the new president, has declared, with no beating around the bush here, that neoliberal parasitic predators have been responsible for global climate woes worldwide.
Wow, that's a headline that never appeared in the United States.
That's the headline, right? Neoliberal parasitic predatory, who is...
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? That's quite a statement.
That is.
At any rate, he goes on to say we have a choice. We can defend life, or we can continue destroying it in the name of the market, technology, progress, developments, and economic growth.
Wow.
That's something else, huh?
That is incredible. I mean, that should be front-page news here in the United States.
At least on page 2 at the bottom somewhere, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what they do not want reported upon. Because he's a big deal. This is one of AMLO's favorite guys, and the Secretaryship of the Environment is a new secretaryship, and very important. And he, anyway, goes on about the importance of legislation to ban shale fracking forever from all of Mexico, and also to ban all genetically modified crops, including corn, of course.
Wow.
Other bits of info that fall under this can't happen. They have arrested the president of Mexico's largest steel company and have an arrest warrant out for the ex-president of Pemex, which is Petróleos Mexicanos, think Exxon.
Right.
So it's as though they have an arrest warrant out for Rex Tillerson. They've arrested the head of U.S. Steel, essentially, but Mexican Steel, all for some fraudulent sales of fertilizer plants to Petróleos Mexicanos, Pemex, back in 2014. They're after the big guys, Tom.
Wow.
It's incredible.
So how long will it be before we see the kind of backlash that happened to Chavez when he did this kind of stuff? I mean, Chavez went farther than this. He was nationalizing these things.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
That's the concern and the worry. But, you know, I don't think this time it's going to happen, not with Mexico. The people are so over the whole thing.
Right.
They've been so riled up for such a long while now, before the election, that I think this is really something that's actually happening, underway, and is going to continue to the good of the people.
So is AMLO... AMLO is the newly elected president of Mexico. Right. You've referred to him in the past as the Bernie Sanders of Mexico. I would say maybe the Elizabeth Warren of Mexico. He doesn't quite call himself a socialist, does he? I mean, he's just pursuing these FDR-like policies.
A democratic socialist as well in his venue of his self-descriptions.
Okay.
He describes himself mostly as a progressive in favor of the people. He doesn't like labels a lot, but he's doing all the right stuff. So.
How is the press treating him down there in Mexico?
This whole stuff with Trump's new tariffs against Mexico, this is bad for the main reason, of course, the obvious reason. Migration through Mexico has nothing to do with trade between Mexico and the United States, which is a NAFTA, essentially, quote-unquote NAFTA, controlled operation. I got dogs barking, sorry.
I got it.
Dogs? Cool. So this puts Mexico in a terrible bind. They adhere to international laws regarding migration through their country. Right. AMLO is a very big proponent of the safeguarding of migrants. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, this isn't just migrants. These are refugees, essentially. These are people fleeing disasters in their own countries.
Yeah, but I think the laws by which Mexico abides are the international laws on migration. As these people, for whatever reason, pass through the country. They have to be safeguarded, they have to be fed, they have to be watered, they have to, have safe places to abide.
Remarkable.
This can be complicated.
Yeah, I can.
Putting him in a real fight.
Nicholas, I got a boogie, but thank you for the call, and thanks for all the all that you do in our YouTube chat room. We'll be back. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Coming up on 28 minutes past the hour, it's the Thom Hartmann Program. It's Anything Goes Friday, and our phones are working. We will be back with your calls in just a few minutes.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, exposing the con in conservative. Day 2 of our fund drive. It's Friday. It's our first Friday of our fund drive. Please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution to Free Speech TV. Help keep this network going, help keep this network alive, help keep this program on this network. All of these things are absolutely necessary if we're to move forward. And moving forward would be a nice thing. In fact, Free Speech TV just announced they're rolling out a new show, Lisa Gar's Aware Show. I was a guest on Lisa Gar's show, when we lived in Vermont, like in 2003, 2004, right around that time. A number of times, in fact, I was on her show. She had me on as the author of books that I'd written. Does a great program, and is going to do a great job here on Free Speech TV. There's a lot. They have built out a lot of great programming. It's remarkable. And they've done it on this little tiny shoestring of a budget. The budget for this entire television network is less than the budget of any one of the 1 hour programs on MSNBC or CNN, for example. the entire network runs on this, relatively small budget, just a few $1 million. I think, I think it's in the neighborhood of around $4 million a year, which is, when you think about it, I mean, frighteningly small. And yet they pull it off. I mean, they really do. And we got it. We got free speech TV on Dish, and we got free speech TV on Direct, and we got free speech TV all over the internet, and you can watch these programs. And I mean, it's remarkable. We're in over 40 million homes directly through Dish and Direct, and theoretically in billions of homes via the internet. So free speech TV is really doing something, and doing something consequential. I mean, you get that from watching this show, right? When we take calls from listeners, and they're literally all over the country watching free speech TV. In fact, one of the cool things about free speech TV, if you're concerned about red states and you're concerned about the message getting through in areas where people are heavily watching Fox so-called news, or just, red state areas where there's very few progressives, in a lot of the rural areas in the United States, there is no cable TV because it's expensive to bring cable out to rural areas. And so the cable companies go, we'll not do that. And so people instead have Dish or Direct, the two cable systems, or the two satellite systems, excuse me. And the consequence of that is that they can get free speech TV, and in red areas, in red parts of red states. And that's why we get so many callers. It's one of the reasons why we get so many callers into this program from Oklahoma and Wyoming and Missouri and rural Idaho, and I mean, fill in the blank, right? Texas. Yeah, we have radio stations in a lot of those places, but well, not so much in the red states, actually. And it's because of free speech TV. Free speech TV is having a big impact. Free speech TV is actually changing political dialogue in the United States. And free speech TV needs your help and support right now. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Fair and Slightly Unbalanced, that's one of the slogans for our program, bumper sticker. With a $72 gift, you get an unautographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, my new book. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. With the slogan, "Democracy Begins With You." With a $500 gift, you have your choice. We're going to do an online virtual meet and greet. It'll be a invitation only to people who've donated $500 or more, and we will meet online, and I will answer your questions in real time. Or with a $500 gift, if you happen to be in the D.C. area on June the 10th, the hour before I do the book signing at Busboys and Poets, I will be doing a meet and greet just for our $500 donors in Washington, D.C. So that's also with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. We get people together every couple times a month, maybe, and it's neat. In fact, we've got some regulars who I've gotten to know and I really like, and it's a marvelous thing. I really enjoy it, and I think the people who come do too. And you get to sit in the studio and see how the program's done, and meet Nate and Sean and Joyce and Nick, and it's just a hoot. So those are the gifts, or the premiums, as it were. But the important thing is supporting a television network that is making change, a television network that is actually promoting a relatively unadulterated progressive perspective. Nobody owns this network. Nobody owns the shows on this network beyond the individual hosts. There's not some giant corporation in the wings or some government that owns the whole thing. It's exactly what you see. Here we are, right? Stephanie owns her show. Say what? I own this show. It's Free Speech TV. So anyhow, please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. may be coming to your city soon on our book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. I'll be in New York, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Here I come. More information is available at thomhartmann.com. Hey, I'll be in New York on Thursday, June 6th at the Strand at 7:30 p.m. On Monday, June 10th, I'll be at Busboys and Poets in Washington, D.C. on K Street Northwest at 6:30 p.m. On Wednesday, June 12th, I'll be here in Portland at 7:30 p.m. at Powell's. And on Sunday, June 23rd, I'll be in Seattle at the Town Hall. We're going to be talking about guns and the hidden history of the Second Amendment. Welcome back. It's Anything Goes Friday, and Mark in San Diego. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I don't know about you, but I'm getting really tired of this Dudley Do-Right Act of Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
I thought this guy was a Marine. He's taking incoming fire from Barr and Trump, and he's not firing back. If I were him, I would be mad as heck of 2 years of my life, and these guys are trashing this report and trashing me up and down. I want to get in front of Congress and set the record straight, and he needs to do that. I haven't read the Mueller report, and I'm into this stuff on a daily basis. I got 2 kids to support. I just don't have the time to read it.
Sure.
And not every other, even half of Congress hasn't read it. So he needs to get there and get in front and I would get mad if I was him. He should be mad.
Oh, he should be. He's behaving like in the context of a Marine, he's behaving like an enlisted man rather than an officer. He's taking orders rather than giving them, and following rather than leading. And I think it's a disaster for him, and I think it's a disaster for our country. And then Bill Barr comes along and lies about what it all means. As he's going to do on television this weekend. I'm totally with you, Mark. And the other thing I would add is members of Congress, in addition to getting Barr getting Mueller to testify, they should be getting Mueller's investigators. The 13 angry Democrats that Trump talks about. I mean, I think most of them are Republicans, but nonetheless, those individual investigators in their areas of expertise should be brought in to testify too. So, Mark, I totally agree with you. Thanks a lot for the call, Mark. It's great to hear from you. Ed in Klamath Falls, Oregon. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Oh, Tom, I've been refining my theory about why the world's falling to the strongmen, the dictators, and the powerful people that are taking over.
Okay.
I believe it has to do with our population. We've reached a critical level where we've become a technological society, and we developed TV and movies, and now the Internet. And people are becoming lost in fantasy land. They're watching superhero movies and they're Game of Thrones, and the Internet's a great time waster. And when good people stop paying attention to the real world, bad men take over.
I think you make a point, Ed, but I think it's actually there's a larger point here too that people very often are missing. And that is that we're disconnecting ourselves not just from each other and not just from the news, from reality, as you point out. We're disconnecting ourselves from nature as well. And I think that's a really big deal. By staring at our screens all day long, we're not looking around us at the green and the blue and the water and the trees and the grass, and we're not noticing whether or not there are bugs or bees. We're just losing our connection to basically the source of all life. So, it's a tough one. Michael in Bronx, New York. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Number one, I heard you're going to be in New York on June 6th. That's my birthday.
Oh, great.
So
Happy birthday in advance here, Michael. And I'll be at the Strand at 7:30 that night.
Okay. When you look at Trump's tirade on the White House lawn yesterday, it proved a couple of things I've said before. All right. All this time he kept saying, Russia never interfered. Russia never helped in the election. And then now he's saying that I had nothing to do with Russia helping me win the election. So now you are acknowledging that Russia helped you win the election, but all beforehand you kept saying never happened, never happened. So I think that's another ammunition for Democrats when it comes to impeachment. And then he's going to walk back on that line, and then he's going to say, well, Russia didn't help me get elected. You know what got me elected? I got myself elected.
Right.
So much for your base, whom you encourage to intimidate the opposition, intimidate voters. You encourage them to engage in violence. You encourage them to engage in hate. You encourage them to engage in domestic terrorism, and those particular crimes are still on the rise thanks to his rhetoric. I wonder what they're thinking now after I know I said this to you before. You probably touched base on it. I'm wondering, when would these people realize that they were being used by a con man and they're throwing their futures away? Lord knows Michael Cohen said it at the live congressional hearing himself, and he's paying the price.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Michael Cohen went to prison for paying off, for violating campaign finance laws by paying off Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal to hide the fact that Trump had affairs with these women before the election. And frankly, Trump should be sharing the jail cell with him. He's the guy who ordered it done. Don Jr. signed the checks. I mean, it's pretty straightforward stuff. So yeah, I'm with you, Michael. I think it's time for impeachment. It really is, or at least time for a serious investigation that will cause the American people to realize that Trump is a criminal. Donnie Deutsch this morning or yesterday was proposing that the whole impeachment thing should be rebranded. Instead of calling it impeachment, it should be criminal activity. We are investigating Trump's criminal activity. I absolutely agree with Donnie Deutsch. This is a really important rebranding for the Democratic Party. Jared in Downington, Pennsylvania. Jared, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. I want to give you a little bit of an update on Pennsylvania elections, since I'm one of the experts on Pennsylvania elections around here.
Okay.
I've lived here my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Wolf has ordered that all counties in Pennsylvania to leave a paper ballot trail last year. And I don't know if you covered that or not.
Is that a Democratic governor?
Yeah.
They're for.
So that we can verify that when the ballots are cast.
Mm-hmm.
And Montgomery just recently updated their system so that now instead of having touch screens, from what I'm looking at, now they can use paper ballots.
Is Montgomery a city or a county?
Montgomery County is one of the largest counties in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
It's right next to where I live in Chester County. Which is one of they're all the original counties that William Penn set up in the 17th century.
In the 1600s, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so you just fill out the ballots, and then you just slide it through the machine so they can, tally up the ballots and votes counted.
Yep.
And I think this is a really good thing that we should be updating our systems and getting away from all these, touch screens. It's really troubling and problematic, I find. And I don't know why more Democratic governors aren't doing this for having a paper ballot trail set up. Do you know why?
I think most Democratic governors are concerned about the integrity of our elections. I don't have a blow-by-blow or state-by-state of how things are done, so I don't know if that is or isn't the case. California, I believe, decertified all of their voting machines, and they've gone entirely to paper. Washington and Oregon have gone entirely to paper because they're entirely mail-in states. Colorado is largely. I think that motion in that direction is what's happening, Jared. But we'll see. Jared, thanks a lot for the call. Steve in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
Good morning there, Tom. I'd like to talk about the Trump and the impeachment and stuff, but I got to say this. I've said it before, and I got to say it again. You, Bill Maher, Michael Moore, you should be on the advisory board to the Democratic Party. You guys are needed.
Thank you.
Very, very much. What I'd like to say here is there's no question we must initiate, an impeachment inquiry into Trump. And Barr and Pence, they should be on that list as well. The premise or meme out there that you can't indict a sitting president, it is absolute hogwash. Nixon, he did his crimes basically after he was originally elected for the first time. And however, big difference here, and this is even worse. Trump's is way worse because he did his crimes before he got elected into office, and the crimes he perpetrated were to get elected.
Yeah, although Nixon actually committed crimes when he was vice president under Eisenhower. He was taking bribes in the White House when he was vice president, too.
Oh, okay.
But that wasn't known at the time of the impeachment.
Correct. Okay, I understand. Trump basically, he's an illegitimate, he's a fake president.
Yeah.
On so many counts. And I'll tell you another thing. It would be really nice to get, the Mexican president's, he seems like a really great guy. Get him to endorse Bernie. That'd be wonderful.
He's not going to do that. He's not going to involve himself in the American political system, I guarantee it. Although Vicente Fox is all over the media. He's got his YouTubes out and all this kind of stuff. So.
Hey, lastly, Tom, I'd like to just wish you a belated birthday to my fellow Tory and you.
Okay, well, thank you. Happy birthday to you too, Steve.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Okay, thanks a lot for the call. Dennis in Bergenfield, New Jersey. Hey, Dennis, what's on your mind today?
How's it going, Tom? I know it's the appropriate time to discuss this, so I want to disagree with you. You said before that, you're afraid that regional banks are controlled by the private small not the small, the private commercial banks are running the Fed, basically.
No, they don't run the Fed. They own the Fed. The Fed is owned by 12 regional banks, and those regional banks are private for-profit corporations.
You're afraid that they're having influence over them, but
I don't think so. I think that I think that to the extent that the regional banks, the big banks, may have some influence over the Fed, it would be, that the Fed would be inclined to do whatever's necessary to save those banks. But beyond that, I think the Fed is actually trying to stabilize our currency and keep things working in this country.
Right, because the member banks don't have voting rights or can't make decisions.
Correct.
But why do you feel that the Fed should be nationalized? That's the point I'm kind of missing. Why do you think the Federal Reserve should be nationalized?
I think it should be owned by we the people. I think ownership is a real thing. I mean, you look at how people behave in companies, how people behave in the media. The ownership of those companies, the ownership of the media, for that matter, will influence the way that people behave. It'll influence the positions that they take. It'll influence people's politics.
Because you feel it's too hidden and not transparent enough. Is that why?
No, it's just you know who your master is, right? Who's
Hamilton wanted, right?
Yeah, well, there were huge debates, but yeah, Hamilton wanted wanted there to be a central bank that was basically, and he got it, by the way. Yeah, there was a national bank that was basically part of the Treasury Department. It was owned by the Treasury Department, and I think that the Treasury Department should take over the Fed. Now, I've been saying that for years and years and years, Dennis, and the Trump administration is causing me to rethink it, because if the Fed was owned by the Treasury Department right now, I don't know if that would give Donald Trump more ability to manipulate the Fed, and that might be a bad thing. So I'm not sure. Dennis, thanks for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's Anything Goes Friday on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Is it Gore or George in Eureka, California?
The problem, or the question I have is, why didn't anybody listen to the SPCA when it comes to abortion? Because the SPCA says that when a dog is mistreated or not wanted at the puppyhood stage, you grow up with a perpetually mean dog that requires tremendous interaction to be able to socialize him. And if a person isn't wanted and an abortion is thwarted, it takes jail. And I've visited jail and been in one. And most of the people who are in there are the products of right to life and no taking care of. I think Planned Parenthood could probably come up with a really valid study of direct from right to life to right in prison. That's about all I have.
Well, is it George or
it's George?
George, okay. There's some really fascinating research from the 1990s and the early 2000s that, what's his name? He wrote The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell. wrote about, as I recall, or it might be the Freakonomics guys. But in any case, it was pointed out in a New York Times best-selling book back more than a decade ago that there was this sudden and precipitous drop in crime, particularly crime committed by juveniles, by people between the ages of 13, 14, and 20, 21. A really significant and substantial drop-off in crime in the early 1990s, and that drop-off in crime continued right up until, well, it's continued right up to this day. And there were two competing theories about why that was. One theory was that back in the 70s, we took lead out of gasoline. And as a consequence of that, and that apparently lead, the lead in the gasoline was getting into the air, and particularly in places where you've got high densities of both humans and cars, like cities or parts of cities that are near freeways and things like that, which tends to be where poor neighborhoods are concentrated, and, or rather, another way would be to say it, cities feel okay building freeways through poor neighborhoods because they don't get as many screams when they, take property by eminent domain, and that by getting rid of that lead in the air, it reduced lead levels in our children, and the lead levels were poisoning them. And so by the 1990s, we were seeing the first generation of children who hadn't been exposed to lead since the 1930s. That was one theory. The other theory, though, was that in 1973, when abortion was legalized, over the next 5 or 6 years, abortion started going up, and the number of unwanted children started going down. And the fewer unwanted children you have, the fewer criminals you have, because so many unwanted children end up as criminals. And that theory has been, nobody's really sure which it was, or if it was a combination of both. But I think both those theories make sense, George.
Is it possible to advocate for Planned Parenthood to go for this?
Well, Planned Parenthood, I don't think that they have been taking credit for a drop in the crime rate, but
a study from them.
Certainly, this is. I'm pretty sure now, as I think about it, that it was the Freakonomics guys, who laid that out in their first book, Freakonomics. But it's fascinating stuff, George. It's absolutely fascinating stuff, and I think you're onto something. Thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to us there in Eureka, California. We'll be back. Stick around. It's 51 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Jeff in where is it? Jeff in San Francisco. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
I just want to announce that AB 857, which is Public Bank for California Cities, has passed the Assembly, and it just needs to go to the Senate and then signed by Gavin Newsom. And California could have it be the second state in the United States to have public bank, but behind North Dakota, and I think that's a big deal and something to look forward to. So hang on just a second here. For people who don't know what we're talking about, public banking is where instead of the bank being owned by investors or being owned by billionaires or whatever, the bank is actually owned by the state or by the city. And banks are money machines. Banks spin off. I mean, the 5 biggest banks in the United States right now are producing literally every month billions of dollars in profits. It's an insanely profitable business, banking, particularly the credit card part of it, but all of it. And so I know that California for some time has been talking about the possibility of public banking. Give me the details again. Well, it's pretty much, just in the model of North Dakota. North Dakota has had a public bank for 100 years now, and they've grown about 18, 19, 20% in that time. And,
right.
California's a little bit bigger, as you know,
right.
About 50 times bigger than we have the 5th largest economy in the world, basically. And we could be, doing lots of infrastructure. They keep complaining, we don't have enough money to finish this bullet train.
Right.
If we own our own bank, just the perfect example is the Bay Bridge cost $13 billion to complete the project. They finished about 5 to 10 years ago. Half that was for financing. So that would have been about $6.5 billion. I mean, that's just perfect sample. And Ellen Brown, I sent you a tweet about this a couple times today. Ellen Brown
she's got a new article out. It's actually a serialization of her book, of her most recent book. But Ellen Brown is spot on. She has been on this thing for so long. And I think she's pointing out that, if California was to create their own bank and just take the money and forget about people who live in California and businesses in California, just take the revenue that the state is dealing with, the tax money that comes in, the money that they spend out, the fees and services, the driver's license fees, property tax, just take all that stuff, right? Just the government functions of California that right now are being run through big banks based in New York City. And those big banks are making, billions, literally billions of dollars in profits off California. If California was simply to have their own bank and thus generate the profit from that bank, from that banking, they could fund a national health care, a statewide healthcare system, their version of Medicare for all. They could fund massive infrastructure projects. There's all kinds of stuff that could be done. So you're telling me that the state assembly just passed a bill for public banking? Is that the bottom line here?
Correct. And it has to go to the Senate and then Gavin Newsom's desk. And, so that's 5 out of 7 steps are completed. So we're getting pretty close. And there's a big push. There's about 150 people that are really dedicated to this. A woman, Trinity Tran, she's been on the big, what's the guy? He's the Turk guy.
Yeah, Cenk Uygur's show. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been on his show, and she's super smart, and she's pretty good friends with AOC, and there's some real vibrant millennials in their 20s, and smart people on, people old like me too, really dedicated to this in San Francisco and up and down the state. I mean, you were talking at least 10 major cities in California, from Eureka down to San Diego, LA, San Francisco, have groups working on this project and really are,
Right. Now, I had heard a while back that there was actually talk about San Francisco creating their own bank. Do you know of any cities in California that are seriously talking about this?
I'm not. Well, I know LA has been pushing for it, but this, that's just San Francisco's. They've kind of put it on the, that Wells Fargo and them. They've got all kinds of, people putting log jams on this.
Oh yeah.
But I think really all of them just said, let's hook up together and do it for the statewide. I mean, either way, you could,
Well, and when North Dakota first did this back in 1913 or 1918 or whatever the year was, back in the 19-teens, they did it because the big banks were not loaning to their farmers. And, that was the starting point, was to basically deal with an actual need. And North Dakota has made so much money on their own, on this state bank. They generate all the profits that are generated from their banking now on behalf of their own state are going to rebuild the state and have been for a long time. Thanks a lot for the news. That's fascinating. We'll continue with your calls right after this. It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Just a heads up once again, I'm going on book tour here next week. And Thursday, June 6th, I'll be at the Strand in New York City at 7:30 p.m. and Monday, June 10th in Washington, D.C. at Busboys and Poets on K Street.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron. We all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Day 2 of our fund drive. It's Friday. It's our first Friday of our fund drive. Please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution to Free Speech TV. Help keep this network going, help keep this network alive, help keep this program on this network. All of these things are absolutely necessary if we're to move forward. Moving forward would be a nice thing. In fact, Free Speech TV just announced they're rolling out a new show, Lisa Gar's Aware Show. I was a guest on Lisa Gar's show, when we lived in Vermont, like in 2003, 2004, right around that time. A number of times, in fact, I was on her show. She had me on as the author of books that I'd written. Does a great program, and is going to do a great job here on Free Speech TV. There's a lot. They have built out a lot of great programming. It's remarkable. And they've done it on this little tiny shoestring of a budget. The budget for this entire television network is less than the budget of any one of the 1-hour programs on MSNBC or CNN, for example. The entire network runs on this, relatively small budget, just a few million bucks. I think it's in the neighborhood of around $4 million a year, which is, when you think about it, frighteningly small. And yet they pull it off. They really do. And we got it. We got Free Speech TV on Dish, and we got Free Speech TV on Direct, and we got Free Speech TV all over the internet, and you can watch these programs. And it's remarkable. We're in over 40 million homes directly through Dish and Direct, and theoretically in billions of homes via the internet. So Free Speech TV is really doing something, and doing something consequential. You get that from watching this show, right? When we take calls from listeners, and they're literally all over the country watching Free Speech TV. In fact, one of the cool things about Free Speech TV, if you're concerned about red states and you're concerned about the message getting through in areas where people are heavily watching Fox so-called news, or just, red state areas where there's very few progressives, in a lot of the rural areas in the United States, there is no cable TV because it's expensive to bring cable out to rural areas. And so the cable companies go, we'll not do that. And so people instead have Dish or Direct, the two cable systems, or the two satellite systems, excuse me. And the consequence of that is that they can get Free Speech TV. And in red areas, in red parts of red states. And that's why we get so many callers. It's one of the reasons why we get so many callers into this program from Oklahoma and Wyoming and Missouri and rural Idaho and fill in the blank, right? Texas. We have radio stations in a lot of those places, but not so much in the red states actually. And it's because of Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV is having a big impact. Free Speech TV is actually changing political dialogue in the United States. And Free Speech TV needs your help and support right now. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the fair and slightly unbalanced, that's one of the slogans for our program, bumper sticker. With a $72 gift, you get an unautographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, my new book. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. With the slogan, "Democracy Begins With You." With a $500 gift, you have your choice. We're going to do an online virtual meet and greet. It'll be a invitation only to people who've donated $500 or more, and we will meet online, and I will answer your questions in real time. Or with a $500 gift, if you happen to be in the D.C. area on June the 10th, the hour before I do the book signing at Busboys and Poets, I will be doing a meet and greet just for our $500 donors in Washington, D.C. So that's also with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. We get people together every couple times a month, maybe, and it's neat. In fact, we've got some regulars who I've gotten to know and I really like, and it's a marvelous thing. I really enjoy it, and I think the people who come do too. And you get to sit in the studio and see how the program's done, and meet Nate and Sean and Joyce and Nick, and it's just a hoot. So those are the gifts, or the premiums, as it were. But the important thing is supporting a television network that is making change, a television network that is actually promoting a relatively unadulterated progressive perspective. Nobody owns this network. Nobody owns the shows on this network beyond the individual hosts. There's not some giant corporation in the wings or some government that owns the whole thing. It's exactly what you see. Here we are, right? Stephanie owns her show. Say what? I own this show. It's Free Speech TV. So anyhow, please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. The groups discussed design standards and other architectural elements. It's the Mueller report.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's Anything Goes Friday. Our phones are working. We're taking your calls. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Number one, Donald Trump has basically laid out his reelection strategy for 2020. And I think it's really important that we all figure this out. Donald Trump is saying basically to white working class people that he gets it, that it's all about jobs. It's not all about the economy necessarily. White working class people are not invested in the stock market. If the stock market goes down, not that big a deal. But they are concerned about jobs. And they get, and this is Trump's base, and they get that the two things, since Reaganism took over the United States essentially, and no president, Republican or Democrat, has yet rolled back Reaganism. We are still in that era of neoliberal free trade and that kind of stuff. And Trump gets this, by the way, and the Democrats have been saying this forever. And Trump is campaigning basically on old Democratic talking points, progressive Democratic positions. That number one, if you don't enforce your own immigration laws within your own country, or at least your own laws that have to do with who's working where and when, if you don't enforce those laws, you're going to end up diluting your labor force, which is going to drive down wages. So Trump is positioning his anti-immigrant rant, which was basically a racist rant, also as a jobs rant. And you can count on the rhetoric on that just going up exponentially over the next 18 months until the election, number one. And number two, trade. White working class people know that there used to be good jobs in this country in manufacturing, and there aren't anymore. I've got an article about this over at Alternet right now, and there's also a copy. It's also printed over at commondreams.org, alternet.org and commondreams.org, about trade. And Trump is using traditionally Democratic, progressive Democratic position to say that this neoliberalism, NAFTA, that was negotiated by Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr., and the final deal, Reagan started the negotiations. George Bush Sr. finished those negotiations in 1992 and brought NAFTA to the floor and was ready to pass it. NAFTA passed Congress with a majority of Republican votes, not a majority of Democratic votes. And, the Democrats, by and large, were opposed to this. And Trump is going to be running against NAFTA, is going to be, and, he didn't do the TPP, it's toxic. He is going to be basically saying, I'm going to bring you back your jobs. And the way I'm going to do it is twofold. Number one, I'm going to get rid of cheap labor competition inside the United States by basically deporting people who don't have a legal right to be here. Trump is going to be saying that. And number two, he's going to be saying that he's going to bring back jobs to the United States by making it more expensive to manufacture overseas. Because the bottom line is that it's, you say, oh, these evil companies, they move their manufacturing offshore. Well, why did they start doing that in the 1980s? Why didn't they do that before that? Why didn't they do that in the 1950s? Why didn't they do that in the 1930s? Why didn't they do that in the 1870s? There was a lot of cheap labor all over the world. They didn't do that because they couldn't, because of tariffs. And because of, domestic content requirements and all these kind of things. So basically, American workers know this. They know that companies move their production overseas for one simple reason: labor is cheaper there. And on these two issues, by the way, Donald Trump is actually right. He's doing them wrong, and he's appealing to, in the immigration issue, he's appealing to a racist base, and on the trade issue, he's appealing to a xenophobic base. But the logic behind both of these positions, which he's going to run on in 2020, he's already running on. I'm getting his emails every other day or so. This is what he's running on: immigration and trade, and both of them are substituting for good jobs, right? That's what he's going to be running on. And I'm telling you, if the Democrats don't step up to this thing, get ready for 4 more years of Donald Trump, 6 more years of Donald Trump as of right now, which is, pretty grim thinking, but hey, there you go. Okay, Anything Goes Friday. Let's pick up your calls. Andy in Billings, Montana. Hey, Andy, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. It's Andy. How are you doing?
I am well. What's up?
Thank you for taking my... So my concern was, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has dealt with this, but I'm a medical marijuana card holder in Montana. I had it prescribed through my doctors, my neurologist. I suffer from seizures, all that. And in order to get that, you have to have criteria to meet. So it's been approved and all that through the legislation. However, the issue that I'm coming across is discrimination in the workplace based on your medical. And I really wanted this job. I qualified for it. I was in a pool of 20 people, and they picked 3 of us. Well, what happened was I had to do the pre-employment drug test, and I went off my medicine, and, I had to choose, am I going to have a high-paying job and pension and a career, or am I going to have to, find some other alternative medicine or get on pills and stuff that's not good for your liver. Well, what happened was I just bear with me. I'm trying to.
No, if you could summarize it, Andy, I'd appreciate it. We've got a bunch of people who want to get in here.
Yeah. So what happened was it was denied. They don't have any. It was just a flat-out no.
So the company offers no exemptions for medical marijuana users to their anti-drug policy. That's a problem all over the country, Andy, and it's not. I mean, this is not unique to Montana, and particularly companies that do business in more than one state. And I know a bunch of people, right, including members of my own family, who are in that position, who are in the medical field or who work in government, who would love to use medical marijuana or just, even recreational pot because it's less destructive to your body than cancer, than alcohol. We now know that just having 1 drink a day, 7 days a week, raises your cancer risk about the same as having several cigarettes a day. I mean, that's pretty dramatic, right? And whereas marijuana does not raise your cancer risk, as far as anybody knows, and in fact, it may reduce your cancer risk. So what we have to do here, Andy, with this is get marijuana off Schedule 1, and that's an act of Congress. I mean, the president theoretically could do it, but Congress can definitely do it. So the thing to do, Andy, is to contact both of your senators and your representative. You know, you're a member of the House of Representatives. Call them up. The telephone number for Congress is 202-225-3121. Give them a call and say, I'm a medical marijuana user, and I can't get the employment that I need because marijuana is a Schedule I drug. You know, if I was taking a prescription drug, a Schedule 2 or 3 drug, it would be no problem. And so let's make marijuana, you know, let's delist marijuana as a Schedule I drug. Take it off that list with LSD and heroin and turn it into something else. So that once that's done, then companies can go along. I think most companies, particularly somebody with seizures, I mean, that's even, you know, a stronger argument for medical marijuana than, you know, people who use it for stress or anxiety or to get to sleep at night or whatever. And you know, I think that would work. But you know, good luck. But that's
writing to my city council, would that even make a difference?
It won't make a difference. No, it will not. This is federal legislation. The problem is the federal law that says that marijuana has no medical value. Schedule I drugs, heroin, LSD, psilocybin. Now, I think all of them have medical value, but that's how they're classified, and as such, they basically just can't be used. Andy, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with your calls after this. And welcome back. Robert in Portland, Oregon, listening on X-Ray FM. Hey, Robert, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Great. What's on your mind?
I got a couple thoughts on the why the Democrats should move forward with the impeachment of Trump. First of all, when Obama was in his last year of his presidency, Mitch McConnell blocked his Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland.
Right.
And
for almost a year.
Yeah, and recently, I just read last week that Mitch McConnell would consider Trump to have a nominee in the Supreme Court if one was to come open in his last year. And I thought...
Oh, he didn't just say he'd consider it. He said we'd fill the seat. That was the exact phrase that he used.
Yeah, we'd fill the seat. Well, if the Democrats moved forward with impeachment hearings, or in fact, if you did get impeached in the House of Representatives, wouldn't an impeached president or a president that's under, impeachment hearings or whatever, how could you have him have a Supreme Court nominee, in his last year or so?
Right.
Number one. Number two, the second thing is...
let me just stop you right there, Robert, and then we'll continue to the second point. The ability of the Senate to nominate somebody or, to hold hearings and approve somebody for the Supreme Court is completely independent of impeachment. The only thing that impeachment does is it reduces or eliminates the president's ability to grant pardons.
Right, and that was, okay, thank you. And that was getting to my second point, so Trump was under impeachment hearings, let's just say. Right. He can't pardon people then, right?
He can't pardon people if the pardons are associated with the impeachment process. In other words, somebody who might be a witness against him, or somebody who might, be a witness to one of his crimes, something like that. I think there's a broad consensus in the legal community, for example, that Trump has offered Paul Manafort a pardon.
Yeah.
And
say Roger Stone, and the list goes on.
Right, exactly.
All of them.
Jerry Corsi.
So
yeah.
It would. I think first of all, I think Democrats should move forward with the impeachment. I mean, I really do.
Right.
I know.
Well, hang on just a second, Robert. There's a couple of steps here. The first thing the Democrats need to do is hold hearings, which they are not doing right now because they can't get witnesses to come forward and testify. And they need to find people who are willing to testify, who are willing to come in. They need to be holding hearings. I mean, we saw 9 minutes of Robert Mueller day before yesterday, and it changed the entire dialogue in the country because it was on television. This is what happened with the Nixon impeachment hearings, and they weren't labeled impeachment hearings, right? This was just a Senate investigation convened by Sam Ervin into the break-in at the Watergate Hotel. And that led to Nixon's impeachment 8 or 9 weeks later. And the simple reality of that was when they started, the majority of Americans did not want Nixon to be impeached. And by the time they were done, the majority of Americans did want Nixon to be impeached. And that's a big deal. I mean, that's a very big deal. So I think that the step one is not to say, we're impeaching him. Step one is to say, we want to investigate criminal activity by Trump and his campaign. That's where they need to start. And if they find it, and if they can explain it to the American public, then that will lead directly to impeachment. So that's how they have to do it. Robert, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. And I do appreciate it. It's Anything Goes Friday. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. 19 minutes past the hour, coming up on 20 past the hour. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. Adam in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania. Hey, Adam, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Love your show. First-time caller.
Thank you.
Calling you from deep red northeastern Pennsylvania. Probably the only two Democrats for miles around, so I'm talking from the closet, keeping my voice down.
All right.
All right.
So what's up?
Two questions for you. So the first one is, if and when Mueller goes to testify or speak in front of Congress, the congressional committees, two questions I was thinking might be asked, and I want to get your thoughts on them. The first one is, was he ever told to wind down the investigation in any way? Because it definitely seems like unfinished business. I know he transferred some of the investigation work to other jurisdictions, Southern District of New York, and so on. And then the second one is, I had heard or read somewhere that the majority of Trump's written answers to the questionnaire that Mueller provided were the answer, I don't recall. And I'm just wondering how Mueller what he thought about that, and was there any recourse to those answers? I'll take your response offline. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Adam. Yeah, Mueller actually notes in his report, in the Mueller report, that Donald Trump responded, I don't remember, somewhere between 30 and 40 times to roughly 30 or 40 questions. So, that was basically what Donald Trump said. And Mueller also points out, in fact, in the report, he says, further FBI investigation may uncover more of this. But he notes that he was lied to, that evidence was destroyed, and that people had poor memories, and specifically Donald Trump. So, yeah, I think that, this is fairly obvious stuff. David in Greenfield, California. Hey, David, what's up?
Hey, I was thinking, I think Donald Trump has weaponized the IRS and is using it to get dirt on congressmen and women and senators.
Now, that was one of the things that Nixon was impeached for. What specifically are you talking about here?
Well, it was kind of, strange to me that, Nancy Pelosi is doing everything in her power to keep Donald Trump from being impeached.
That's not true, David.
I'm like trying to
that's just not true.
Why she's doing this.
Yeah, it's just not true, David.
It is totally true. She said in the beginning, we have to wait for the Mueller report. So the Mueller report comes in. It's got all this bad stuff on it. And she says, no, we can't do it now. We have to wait because we might upset them.
No, what she is saying, David, very clearly, and I think that we all need to hear this message, is that in the absence of widespread public opinion that Donald Trump has committed crimes worthy of impeachment, you can't impeach him. And that's true. That's absolutely true. You cannot impeach Donald Trump if the majority of Americans don't think he should be impeached. You just can't do it. The majority of Americans never thought that Bill Clinton should be impeached, and it didn't work. Right? And Pelosi does not want to have an impeachment, basically, hoop-de-doop in the House that goes nowhere, and then Donald Trump gets to say, when he's redeemed by the Senate, Mitch McConnell has said it'll take him about 10 minutes, metaphorically. Donald Trump will start declaring victory, and Pelosi does not want that to happen. She wants the American public to know what's going on. And this is where we need to have these hearings. The House Intelligence Committee needs to start having open hearings. The House Oversight Committee needs to have open hearings. The House Judiciary Committee needs to open hearings. I mean, it's just very straightforward stuff. And when as it becomes obvious on television, where Americans get their news, as it becomes obvious, undeniable, that Donald Trump not only was a criminal for 40, 50 years, but is a criminal in the White House, that we've got a guy in the White House who's committing crimes, then impeachment has its own momentum. And it doesn't need Nancy Pelosi. Greg in Fairplay, Colorado. Hey, Greg, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Just a couple things have been kind of bothering me. I watched a Fox interview with Dershowitz, and they keep talking about Barr's investigating the start of the Russian influence on the elections.
Right.
And I thought the Mueller report specifically stated how this investigation started with a foreign country giving our government information about this Russian interference. And
yes, it started with Papadopoulos having drinks with an Australian ambassador and telling him that the Russians were going to provide the Trump campaign with dirt on Hillary Clinton that would sink her candidacy. And he went back to his government and told them, and the Australian government notified the State Department that this had happened, and they notified the Obama administration more broadly, and who had notified the FBI, who opened an investigation. Neil McCabe was the guy who started that. He was the acting director of the FBI at the time.
And that is in the Mueller report, correct?
Yes, it is in the Mueller report.
And then the other thing that they were talking about is, this investigation. They want to get into the criminal activity of these people on the FBI, Lisa Page, I think.
Yeah, and Peter Strzok. Yeah, there was no criminal activity there. That was, exhaustively investigated, a couple of years ago by Congress, by Devin Nunes, for God's sake, I mean, it destroyed their reputations because they were having an affair and because they were texting each other things about how much they hated Trump. But in terms of their behavior, their work at the FBI, there is no question that their work was right down the middle, impartial. They were doing their jobs.
Well, I remember the Inspector General looked into that and said that there was no influence on the investigation.
That's right. The FBI's Inspector General. See, Trump is doing this let's investigate the investigators thing, not because he thinks he's going to find something, although maybe in his fevered brain he actually thinks he'll find something. But, I mean, this is Sean Hannity's strategy. It is destroy anybody who might hurt you. Just destroy them. And the FBI could do a lot of damage to Donald Trump. I mean, this guy's been a criminal for most of his life, and his family operates a criminal enterprise, and he's running a criminal enterprise out of the White House. Look at, Carl Icahn, just a couple of days before Trump put tariffs on steel. Carl Icahn, who's Trump's good buddy, they talk on the phone every week, starts dumping steel stocks like there's no tomorrow. I mean, it's insane. There's all kinds of criminal activity that needs to be looked into, but starting the investigation into whether Russia was trying to influence our elections, that is not the criminal, But this is another Trump scam, Greg. Thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with more of Anything Goes Friday in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars. Day 2 of our fund drive. It's Friday. It's our first Friday of our fund drive. Please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution to Free Speech TV. Help keep this network going, help keep this network alive, help keep this program on this network. All of these things are absolutely necessary if we're to move forward. Moving forward would be a nice thing. In fact, Free Speech TV just announced they're rolling out a new show, Lisa Gar's Aware Show. I was a guest on Lisa Gar's show, when we lived in Vermont, like in 2003, 2004, right around that time. A number of times, in fact, I was on her show. She had me on as the author of books that I'd written. does a great program and is going to do a great job here on Free Speech TV. There's a lot. They have built out a lot of great programming. It's remarkable. And they've done it on this little tiny shoestring of a budget. The budget for this entire television network is less than the budget of any one of the 1 hour programs on MSNBC or CNN, for example. The entire network runs on this, relatively small budget, just a few million bucks. I think, I think it's in the neighborhood of around $4 million a year, which is, when you think about it, I mean, frighteningly small. And yet they pull it off. I mean, they really do. And we got it. We got Free Speech TV on Dish, and we got Free Speech TV on Direct, and we got Free Speech TV all over the internet, and you can watch these programs. And I mean, it's remarkable. We're in over 40 million homes directly through Dish and Direct, and theoretically in billions of homes via the internet. So Free Speech TV is really doing something, and doing something consequential. I mean, you get that from watching this show, right? When we take calls from listeners, and they're literally all over the country watching Free Speech TV. In fact, one of the cool things about Free Speech TV, if you're concerned about red states and you're concerned about the message getting through in areas where people are heavily watching Fox so-called news, or just, red state areas where there's very few progressives, in a lot of the rural areas in the United States, there is no cable TV because it's expensive to bring cable out to rural areas. And so the cable companies go, we'll not do that. And so people instead have Dish or Direct, the two cable systems, or the two satellite systems, excuse me. And the consequence of that is that they can get Free Speech TV, and in red areas, in red parts of red states. And that's why we get so many callers. It's one of the reasons why we get so many callers into this program from Oklahoma and Wyoming and Missouri and rural Idaho, and I mean, fill in the blank, right? Texas. Yeah, we have radio stations in a lot of those places, but well, not so much in the red states, actually. And it's because of Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV is having a big impact. Free Speech TV is actually changing political dialogue in the United States. And Free Speech TV needs your help and support right now. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the fair and slightly unbalanced, that's one of the slogans for our program, bumper sticker. With a $72 gift, you get an unautographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, my new book. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. With the slogan, "Democracy begins with you." With a $500 gift, you have your choice. We're going to do an online virtual meet and greet. It'll be a invitation only to people who've donated $500 or more, and we will meet online, and I will answer your questions in real time. Or with a $500 gift, if you happen to be in the D.C. area on June the 10th, the hour before I do the book signing at Busboys and Poets, I will be doing a meet and greet just for our $500 donors in Washington, D.C. So that's also with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. We get people together every couple times a month, maybe, and it's neat. In fact, we've got some regulars who I've gotten to know and I really like, and it's a marvelous thing. I really enjoy it, and I think the people who come do too. And you get to sit in the studio and see how the program's done, and meet Nate and Sean and Joyce and Nick, and it's just a hoot. So those are the gifts, or the premiums, as it were. But the important thing is supporting a television network that is making change, a television network that is actually promoting a relatively unadulterated progressive perspective. Nobody owns this network. Nobody owns the shows on this network beyond the individual hosts. There's not some giant corporation in the wings or some government that owns the whole thing. It's exactly what you see. Here we are, right? Stephanie owns her show. Say what? I own this show. It's Free Speech TV. So anyhow, please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. I may be coming to your city soon on our book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. I'll be in New York, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Here I come. More information is available at thomhartmann.com. And I'll be in New York June 6th, Thursday, at the Strand at 7:30 p.m. I'll be in D.C. at 6:30 p.m. at Busboys and Poets on K Street Northwest. And on June 12th, on Wednesday, June 12th, I'll be here in Portland at Powell's on Burnside. So a lot going on. Anyhow, anything goes Friday. And Lori in Garden Prairie, Illinois. Hey, Lori, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I'm curious. Isn't Nancy Pelosi's hands kind of tied? Because if Mitch McConnell and the Senate won't do anything and think Donald Trump's innocent, we're kind of at a standby and just waiting.
Yes, that is absolutely, that's the essence of what I was saying before the break. And really, that's how it should be. I mean, you don't want the Congress doing things that the public doesn't support, generally speaking. So the job that the Democrats have right now to do is to get enough public support for an impeachment of Trump. They got to hit that, 60+% that they hit during the Nixon hearings, and they do that by having public hearings. And then once you've got that level of public support, the Republicans can't defy it any longer. That's the point at which, hey, it's got to happen. It's absolutely got to happen. You nailed it, Lori. Thank you very much for the call. Emmy Lou in Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, Emmy Lou, what's up?
Yes. Hi, Tom. You're one of my favorites. I listen to this station all the time when I'm in the car.
Well, thank you. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM's Progress Channel.
That's okay. As an ex-educator who taught part-time at grad school, I am at the point now where I think many of us are. We're very frightened. I mean, I get up in the middle of the night and thinking Armageddon's going to come on if I don't check my Facebook. But the bottom line is, here's my question. Anyone who has read Mueller report, there's no question that Donald Trump has committed treason, and everyone else, all his minions following him, has. What my question to you is, when William Barr ignored the subpoena, issued to be at the House of Representatives on a certain day, and he ignored it, there's a sergeant of arms that is always there, and his job is to arrest anyone that breaks the law as far as the subpoenas go. Why wasn't this put forth? If they had arrested him and arrested everyone else that ignored a federal subpoena, it would have showed a lot of power for the Democrats and for the people that don't agree with what's going on. It's time. I mean, you're never going to become friends with the Republicans and the people that are thinking the way they are.
Yeah, and the Democrats are I think that's slowly dawning on them, unfortunately. But, Emmy Lou, here's the process. First, the Judiciary Committee, which I believe was the committee that he was supposed to testify before, Jerry Nadler's committee, has to hold him in contempt. They have to vote to hold him in contempt. They have done that.
Correct.
Then that contempt vote goes to the whole House, the entire House of Representatives. That has to be approved by Nancy Pelosi, and then the entire House of Representatives votes on whether to hold him in contempt. She has not done that yet, and I'm guessing she has not done that yet because she doesn't, not a single Republican is going to vote for holding other than probably Justin Amash, holding Bill Barr in contempt. So she's going to have her entire Democratic caucus. And I'm guessing that she does not have enough votes for that contempt vote to work, or she would have already done it. So she's got to work on that. Once that happens, then the Sergeant at Arms can act. Although, typically, when a contempt citation is issued by Congress, it is sent to, guess who, Emmy Lou? The Attorney General. So they would be sending a contempt citation asking for police action about Bill Barr to Bill Barr. They'd be saying, Bill Barr, please arrest yourself.
But there must be some provisions, and to me, don't you think that it would be beneficial for the people that do care about what's going on to know which Democrats in the House of Representatives would not support this?
Yes, and I agree
would
with.
like to know which ones.
I would too, and the way that you can find out if your member of Congress supports it or not, Democrat or Republican, is to call them 202-225-3121 and just say, hey, you know, I think Trump. You know, we need to investigate the crimes of Donald Trump, and
Yeah, I understand that. I do know which ones of mine that's in the House of Representatives would, and I know which ones wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be beneficial for everyone to know that there was a vote and such and such and such and such did not vote for it.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'm with you. Emmy Lou, thank you for the call. Kenyatta in San Bernardino, California. Hey, Kenyatta, what's on your mind today?
Don't you dare say I'm in San Bernardino. You know I'm in Redlands.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what it says here on the call screener. So, what's up?
Listen. I wanted to first say congrats on conquering the vast right-wing telephony conspiracy.
Yes. Oh, this box has been dying slowly for months, and I should have done this a long time ago. It's all on my shoulder. We just, you know, well, whatever. Back to you.
Yeah. I got you. Listen, I wanted to throw something at you, Tom. I feel like Donald Trump feels like he has the Democrats cornered. And what I mean by that is that if there is impeachment, he's going to his base, he's going to be the victim. He's going to be the martyr. It's going to be another hoax. It's going to be a furtherance of the hoax.
Sure.
If he isn't impeached, he's going to say, see, they had nothing. They were afraid.
Yep.
If they thought there was anything with it. And the political calculus that I come up with is that Democrats really need whether or not they want to admit it, need crossover voters, less so than the Republicans do. Now, Tom, I'm in Redlands, California, which is a freckle on the political landscape in California in terms of being a Trump stronghold. And these people are rabid. Do you understand his? I don't think that most people understand who aren't part of, and I'm not, but that aren't around his, because you're either in a blue state or a red state. But when you happen to be in California, being a blue state, and one of these pockets where this freckle is, you get to see a contrast. I can only imagine what this might, what the fervor is.
Yeah.
And
what it looks like in Louisiana,
red states.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. The premise upon which you just rested that whole rant was that we need the crossover voters. Respectfully, I'd like to disagree, and here's why. This new study just came out from Pew, and in fact, there's a piece about it over at Daily Kos that was written by the Daily Kos staff, but it links to the actual Pew Research study. And here it is, top line, only 7% of Americans are true independents, individuals who genuinely don't lean toward either of the two major parties. And of those, only 33% voted in 2018. So the number of actual independents out there who bothered to vote is 2.3% of the population. And
I'm familiar with that study, Tom.
Yeah. So what we need to do, and this is where I think the Democrats have been making a horrible mistake for a long time, and the Republicans figured this out back, frankly, I think during the Clinton presidency, was forget about reaching out to the other party. Forget about even reaching out to so-called independents and the vast middle. There is no vast middle. It's 2.3% of the voters. Instead, put all your effort into super serving your base and turning people who might be, kind of wishy-washy into your base. And I think that
absolutely agree with you. Listen, I'll be quick. The last time I spoke with you, I was kind of trying to make that point. We ran out of time. I absolutely, when Pelosi said on one of the late-night shows last night that impeachment would divide the country, how the hell could it be any more divided than what it is?
Yeah, exactly.
So solidify the base.
Yeah, exactly.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And that's why I believe that the House of Representatives needs to open an inquiry into the crimes of the Trump crime family. Period. And I think Donnie Deutsch really laid this out well on MSNBC this morning, and it's getting pushback by the way from some so-called centrist Democrats that stop talking about impeachment, start talking about the crimes of Donald Trump. People understand crimes. They don't. Most Americans don't even understand the impeachment process. They don't know the difference between the House and the Senate. The various roles that they play. They're only marginally paying attention. But everybody knows what a crime is and what a criminal is. Kenyatta, brilliant. Thank you very much for the call. Charles in Miami Gardens, Florida. Hey, Charles, what's up?
Oh, just went behind enemy. First of all, I love your show. Thank you, Tom, for everything you do.
Thanks, Charles. It's okay. You don't need to acknowledge me. What's up?
I went behind enemy lines yesterday. I was watching Brett Beer, and they came on with a program. And part of this reporting was that China controls so much of our medication. You know, they even supply the U.S. military with medication that if they was to, I guess, lower the prices, they would almost like the way they dump the steel. And it has such a bad effect on America's steelwork, you know. It can happen with the medication.
And here's how that happened, Charles. Back in when Reagan started liberalizing our trade policies, or neoliberalizing our trade policies. That word could be confusing, I suppose. When Reagan started changing our trade policies, American drug manufacturers started moving offshore. And a lot of them actually got bought up by foreign companies as well. But, Merck is Swiss, Bayer is German, et cetera. But they started moving offshore. And the federal government had passed legislation to encourage the development of Puerto Rico. And so a lot of the drug manufacturing moved to Puerto Rico because there were these giant tax breaks for manufacturing drugs in Puerto Rico. Ireland and India and China came along and said, oh, we'll beat those. And the tax breaks to manufacture drugs in Puerto Rico expired a couple of years ago. So pretty much nothing is being made in Puerto Rico anymore, and it's all moved to India and China. And you're absolutely right, Charles. We've got to get this stuff back. It's scary. Thank you very much for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And Charles's point is a really good one. If we don't make things strategic commodities here in the United States, this is what Alexander Hamilton said, we're screwed. And welcome back. Let's see here. David is it Kearney, New Jersey, David?
Yes, Tom. Hi. Nice to speak to you.
Nice talking with you. What's up?
Good. A lot of respect for what you're saying and everything. I obviously respect your opinions and everything. But, I mean, let's face it. I mean, honestly and seriously, what is the actual crime that we're looking at? The Democrats came in with a fake dossier to go out there and create some sort of a hoax to go out there and try to get rid of a duly elected president with some sort of Russian, false narratives. And it's true. And we all know it's true. All right. And you guys are tending to do whatever you possibly can to get rid of the president. You're hurting the country, and these clowns don't even realize it.
Yeah.
All right.
David, you supported and voted for a man who lied to your face. He lied to you about the affairs he was having with Stormy Daniels. He lied to you about a year-long affair he had with Karen McDougal. He lied to you about the fact that he was negotiating to build a hotel in Moscow. He lied to you. He lied to your face. And you're still supporting this guy, David?
He lied to your face, and so did Hillary with the
and his lies, excuse me, I'm not trying to relitigate the 2016 election here. What I'm pointing out is that the man in the White House that you are supporting is a liar. He lied to you, and in the process of lying to you, and he paid people, by the way, to lie to you, in the process of doing that, he broke the law. There are laws against paying people off to be silent, using campaign money to pay people off to be silent during an election. That's against the law. That's not just against the law in a small way. Michael Cohen is sitting in prison right now for the next 5 years because he's the guy who wrote the check, who cut the deal, rather, with Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. He's the guy who was negotiating Trump Tower Moscow. He's the guy who Donald Trump ordered to do these things. These are crimes. Donald Trump should be in prison for these crimes, and the only reason he's not, as Bob Mueller pointed out on television 2 days ago, is that the Justice Department guidelines say you can't indict a sitting president. You have to wait till he leaves office. I don't get, David, why you think that there's something more, some weird thing going on here. This is obvious on its face.
Trump colluded with the Russians, Tom. Answer the question.
I beg your pardon?
Did Trump collude with the Russians?
Yeah, obviously.
Are you kidding me? I mean, we had 5
Russians,
investigations.
listen, a Russian oligarch reaches out to Donald Trump and says, on behalf of the Russian government, they literally said that, and you can read this. I mean, this is not secret stuff again, David. On behalf of the Russian government, we will provide you with dirt on Hillary Clinton. And what was Donald Trump Jr.'s response? Wonderful. I love it. Those were his exact words. Now, when foreign governments have reached out to previous administrations and said, we're here to help, if John McCain turned it over to the FBI, John Kerry turned it over to the FBI. When somebody stole Ronald Reagan's debate papers, during the Carter election in 1980, they stole Reagan's debate prep notes and gave them to the Jimmy Carter campaign. What did the Carter campaign do? And this wasn't even the Russians. This was some American. They called the FBI. What did the Trump crime family do when somebody came along and said, hey, a hostile foreign power wants to help you in the election? They said, wonderful, I love it. David, I don't get how you can support a criminal.
You know it. All right, you guys are so two-faced.
David, I'm out of whatever it is. That's bizarre. Anyhow, we'll be back. It's coming up on, 10 minutes before the hour. We're going to check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world. Luke Vargas will be with us. Stick around. Welcome back. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. And on the line with us is the chief foreign correspondent for Talk Media News from New York, Luke Vargas, who also does a podcast, and you can follow him on Twitter at The Courier. Luke, Mexico, 5% tariffs going up to 25% tariffs if they don't stop immigration in the United States, which, of course, is never going to happen. So how's Mexico playing this?
Yeah, we spend 40, 50, 60 billion dollars a year, depending on how you look at it, to try and do exactly this at our southern border, and we've been failing. And yet we're now, expecting or asking Mexico to do the impossible here. And it's worth really pointing out, I've done several interviews on this morning, talking to Mexican immigration experts and people watching this all over the hemisphere, and they basically say that the level of cooperation between the U.S. and Mexico on immigration the past few months, really since the start of the Trump administration, has been pretty good. They've, by and large, complied with 3 of the big requests of President Trump so far, which is to beef up enforcement of the southern border with Guatemala, where a lot of people enter into Mexico in the first place from Central America. They have been trying to create asylum systems that either allow people to stay in southern Mexico, to get work permits there, or to stay in places like Guatemala before going on to their onward journeys. That's, again, not perfect, but its effort has been dedicated there. And they're trying to deal with human trafficking and drug smuggling, which is, again, something Trump loves to rail on. And so depending on how you look at this, it's possible Trump is, setting himself, he's basically painting himself as being someone who's issuing a very sternly worded demand. And then when Mexico says, look, we actually are cooperating, here's what we're doing, he can point to that suddenly. And again, the context of these programs already being in the works don't really matter to a Fox News audience. But you could then say, hey, look at all these areas of cooperation. Now we don't need to go down this tariff route. At the same time, it's a little worrisome that he's ignoring the cooperation that already exists and distorting this as much as the president had. And that doesn't necessarily give people confidence here. So it's, and I would also point out, this was a pretty conciliatory, peaceable letter, I thought, from Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the Mexican president. But, read the Mexican papers this morning, and you can tell the commentary class in that country is getting fed up with this. I have long postulated there's sort of been kind of a wink-wink here where the Mexican political establishment realizes Trump is going to bash Mexico until the end of his life, his last tweet.
Well, he's going to do it certainly up until the end of the election.
Right. Well, and I have a hunch it'll go even beyond that, just gauging from the way he's, treated immigrants throughout his business career. But, at the same time, I think there was sort of an acknowledgement we might have to put up with some verbal bashing, but at the same time, maybe the president will stop short of actually completely screwing up the relationship or purposefully harming the relationship. And I think there's concern now from Mexican opinion leaders that this has gone too far, that Mexico actually needs to start being more forcible in how it pushes back here. And the thing to watch, I don't think I'm breaking ranks here from other analysts, is that, what happens with this U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement? You've seen some efforts in the past few weeks, particularly targeted at Canada, coming from the Trump administration, but also towards Mexico, to really try and get this deal ratified by the Congress, by the Canadian Parliament and the Mexican legislature, and that there were steps being taken to try and sort of pacify these relationships even more, bring trade back to normal sort of pre-tariff levels as a way of incentivizing all these countries to ink this thing. And now I think you're seeing Mexico scramble some of its trade negotiators and sending them to Washington today, threatening that if these tariffs go ahead, that this whole trade relationship is going to break down. So it seems possible here that the timing of this on Trump's part was really inopportune, unless there is, and some have said this, and this is where I think my expertise starts to dry up a little bit, but unless, there is an effort going on in the White House to try and get more concessions from Mexico to this trade deal than had already been agreed to, as a way of trying to make its passage to the U.S. Congress a little bit easier. I don't know the politics of who opposes this deal in the Democratic or Republican caucuses, but that's one sort of interpretation I've seen. But again, it's kind of head-scratching, because the things Trump is asking Mexico to do here are either impossible or are things that they're sort of already doing in degrees and ought to be getting more credit for than, of course, they're getting.
Right. I can tell you, Luke, I grew up in Michigan, and in the middle of car country in Lansing, Michigan. And in the 70s and the early 80s, there was all this. Literally, if you in the mid 1970s, if you drove a Japanese car, you could guarantee that if you parked at any mall, any large mall, you could go in, shop for an hour, come out, your car will have been keyed by somebody who was an auto worker, who was PO'd that we were importing cars from Japan. And there was also anti-immigrant sentiment that was not so much racially driven as it was, this guy wants to take my job. And Trump is campaigning on jobs. He's not saying it out loud, but working people all across the country, particularly in the industrial Midwest, know this. And they know it at a deep level, that when Trump talks about immigration, the racists hear that message, but the working people, they get the message that he's talking about those people have been taking our jobs, those people in quotes. And when he talks about trade, they also know that the only reason why General Motors right now is making engine blocks in Mexico is because the labor's cheaper there. The only reason that Walmart is buying stuff, companies are making stuff in China for Walmart, is because the labor's cheaper there. People get that. And so by running on immigration and trade, which are the two focal points of Trump's campaign for re-election, he is activating that white middle class working base, even in the Democrats. These are the Obama Democrats who voted for Donald Trump, and they're going to vote for him again if he keeps doing this. I think that what he's doing is strategically going to work for him. Now, whether he brings down the whole economy or not, that's going to be another question.
Yeah, you're right. The voters he's going after here don't care that the U.S. trade representative is probably pulling his hair out after having...
No, and they don't care what happens to the stock market either. They don't own stock.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, I will say, this, if you're China or you're Japan or other countries that are negotiating with the U.S. on trade, this should give you 1,000 reasons to not trust the U.S. as a negotiating partner. But again, that's a very different set of political implications. That
I think this is
looking at here in 2020. This
is all about November 2020, and like I said, I'm on Trump's mailing list, and this is all he's talking about: is trade, is jobs, trade and jobs, and immigration and jobs. Luke Vargas with Talk Media News. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Tom.
Good talking with you.
We say fight back!
You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Day 2 of our fund drive. It's Friday. It's our first Friday of our fund drive. Please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution to Free Speech TV. Help keep this network going, help keep this network alive, help keep this program on this network. All of these things are absolutely necessary if we're to move forward. And you know, moving forward would be a nice thing. In fact, you know, Free Speech TV just announced they're rolling out a new show, Lisa Gar's Aware Show. I was a guest on Lisa Gar's show, geez, when we lived in Vermont, like in 2003, 2004, right around that time. A number of times, in fact, I was on her show. She had me on as the author of books that I'd written. Does a great program, and is going to do a great job here on Free Speech TV. There's a lot, they have built out a lot of great programming. It's remarkable. And they've done it on this little tiny shoestring of a budget. The budget for this entire television network is less than the budget of any one of the one-hour programs on MSNBC or CNN, for example. The entire network runs on this, you know, relatively small budget, you know, just a few million bucks. I think, you know, I think it's in the neighborhood of around $4 million a year, which is, when you think about it, I mean, frighteningly small, and yet they pull it off. I mean, they really do. And we got it. We got Free Speech TV on Dish, and we got Free Speech TV on Direct, and we got Free Speech TV all over the internet, and you can watch these programs. And I mean, it's remarkable. We're in over 40 million homes directly through Dish and Direct, and you know, theoretically in billions of homes via the internet. So Free Speech TV is really doing something, and doing something consequential. I mean, you get that from watching this show, right? When we take calls from listeners, and they're literally all over the country watching Free Speech TV. In fact, one of the cool things about Free Speech TV, if you're concerned about red states and you're concerned about the message getting through in areas where people are heavily watching Fox so-called news, or just, you know, red state areas where there's very few progressives, in a lot of the rural areas in the United States, there is no cable TV because it's expensive to bring cable out to rural areas. And so the cable companies go, you know, well, no, we'll not do that. And so people instead have Dish or Direct, the two cable systems, or the two satellite systems, excuse me. And the consequence of that is that they can get Free Speech TV, and in red areas, in red parts of red states. And that's why we get so many callers. It's one of the reasons why we get so many callers into this program from you know, Oklahoma and Wyoming and Missouri and rural Idaho, and I mean, you know, fill in the blank, right? Texas. Yeah, we have radio stations in a lot of those places, but well, not so much in the red states, actually. And it's because of Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV is having a big impact. Free Speech TV is actually changing political dialogue in the United States. And Free Speech TV needs your help and support right now. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Fair and Slightly Unbalanced, that's one of the slogans for our program, bumper sticker. With a $72 gift, you get an unautographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, my new book. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. With the slogan, "Democracy Begins With You." With a $500 gift, you have your choice. We're going to do an online virtual meet and greet. It'll be a, invitation only to people who've donated $500 or more, and we will meet online, and I will answer your questions in real time. Or with a $500 gift, if you happen to be in the D.C. area on June the 10th, the hour before I do the book signing at Busboys and Poets, I will be doing a meet and greet just for our $500 donors in Washington, D.C. So that's also with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. We get people together every couple times a month, maybe, and it's neat. In fact, we've got some regulars who I've gotten to know and I really like, and it's a marvelous thing. I really enjoy it. And I think the people who come do too. And you get to sit in the studio and see how the program's done, and meet Nate and Sean and Joyce and Nick, and it's just a hoot. So those are the gifts, or the premiums, as it were. But the important thing is supporting a television network that is making change, a television network that is actually promoting a relatively unadulterated progressive perspective. Nobody owns this network. Nobody owns the shows on this network beyond the individual hosts. There's not some giant corporation in the wings or some government that owns the whole thing. It's exactly what you see. Here we are, right? Stephanie owns her show. Say what? I own this show. It's Free Speech TV. So anyhow, please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. 2014 through July 2014, the groups discussed design standards and other architectural elements. It's the Mueller report.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Back between 1986, and it's Anything Goes Friday, by the way, and our phones are working, so we'll be taking your calls. Back between 1986 and 1988, the New York Times documented this back in the first week of May here, just a few weeks ago. I mean, it's the first time that this story really came out. But what Donald Trump was doing, in addition to inheriting hundreds of millions of dollars from his daddy, Fred, is he was doing basically pump and dump schemes. And the House Ways and Means Committee has said, we want to look into this, and Steve Mnuchin is saying, no, you can't do that. But basically what he was doing is he was buying up companies or buying up stock in companies, and then putting the word out that he was going to acquire those companies. Now, this was in the mid-'80s, before Donald Trump's name became a joke. His name became a joke after, by the 90s, and then he had his bankruptcies, and he had all these businesses that failed, and he declared bankruptcy 4 or 5 times. But before that, when he still was, when people were still buying his BS, and he was lying through his teeth back then too. He would buy a bunch of stock at a company, say buy a bunch of stock at Eastern Airlines, and say I'm going to take over Eastern Airlines, or I'm thinking about taking over Eastern Airlines. And suddenly everybody goes, oh, a takeover, and the stock price goes up. And as soon as the stock price goes up, Donald Trump sells all his stock. And that's called pump and dump, right? And it's against the law. And Trump did this 4, 5, 6 times with different companies until finally the Wall Street figured out that it was a scam. And the next time Trump bought a bunch of stock at a company, Wall Street was like, eh. So the question on my mind right now, particularly given the fact that we know, the reporting is pretty unambiguous, that one week before Donald Trump declared, this was a year and a half ago, but 1 week before Donald Trump declared a tariff on steel imports, Carl Icahn sold tens of millions of dollars worth of stock in companies that would have been affected by those steel tariffs. And all those companies went down after Trump announced the tariff. Carl Icahn sold, I think it was over $31 million worth of this stuff. Carl Icahn is a good buddy of Donald Trump's. They talk on the phone regularly. Is this more of this pump and dump stuff? Is this, and for that matter, when Trump announced the tariffs with Mexico. You know, he knew it would have a negative effect on the stock market. What's he doing with his stock investments? What's his family doing with his stock investments? What are his buddies doing? What's Sean Hannity? What are the guys at Fox News, Lou Dobbs, that he talks to every day on the phone? What are they doing with their investments? Inquiring minds want to know. Anyhow, it's Anything Goes Friday, picking up your calls. Mary in Chicago. Hey, Mary, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I would like to report some good news for once.
Hey, that sounds great. What's up?
Yes, the state of Illinois finally saw the wisdom of abandoning the flat income tax, which is, you know, a part of our state income tax system, and the governor went ahead and signed approval for a progressive income tax.
Wow, I didn't realize you had a flat tax.
Illinois.
Yeah, that's great.
We are being killed by local property taxes in this state. I think Chicago and the outlying county I consider number 1 or 2 in terms of their property tax rates.
Right.
It's time to get rid of this tax scam where we're going to do everything local, but local taxes are regressive.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mary. And not only that, the thing that amazes me is that, you know, and it's right out in the open, right, that we're saying to middle-class people, if you own something of wealth, we're going to tax it, specifically property. If you own your house, even if you have a mortgage on it, you still have to pay the taxes. You may only own half the house and the bank owns the other half, but you have to pay taxes on all of it. But if somebody owns something else that's worth much, much more, say the billionaire down the street has a money bin filled with gold coins that they go swimming in every morning, like Scrooge McDuck, they don't have to pay any tax on that at all. So there's a property tax is a wealth tax, and it's a wealth tax that largely falls on middle class and working class people. And I think that property tax is frankly wrong. There was a decade or so where Ireland got rid of their property tax altogether. But it's a very addictive thing for communities. But Mary, that's good news. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. That the state income tax has gone from flat, regressive to progressive. That's very good news. Jeff in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind?
Hey, happy Friday, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Just out of curiosity, will you be going to Anything Goes Summer in the near future?
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Okay. We've done that in the past. Yeah, when summers slow down a lot, it'll depend on what happens.
Sure thing. Okay. Well, first off, I highly recommend your write-up on the trade issue to everyone. And there's also a good companion piece to it, also on Common Dreams from a Canadian perspective by Maud Barlow, which was posted on last Sunday, posted on the 26th. It was titled, "In the Face of Right-Wing Strongmen and an Economy Rife with Insecurity, We Must Reject the Politics of Despair." And our neighbors to the north, they're facing a lot of the same problems that you talk about, going from an exporting and manufacturing economy to an importing and extractive economy. Fortunately for them, though, Tom, they have triple the unionization rate as we do, and of course they have their Medicare for All health system. So those are two things. Along with fair trade, that we definitely need any Democratic nominee to be completely on board with in 2020. But I wanted to talk about the impeachment stuff, and I hope you're right when you say Nancy Pelosi knows what she's doing, Tom, because I do fear, as has been the case with these free trade policies, that centrist Democrats might be underestimating the capacity of the average American to decipher what is fair and what is just.
I think they're overestimating it, frankly. The Democrats need to learn from when the Republicans went after Hillary Clinton for her emails and for Benghazi. The Democrats need to do the same thing right now with Donald Trump. They need to hold basically show trials in the House of Representatives. Forgive the interruption, Jeff. Back to you.
Well, yeah, but what I was going to say, if the GOP, the Republicans, keep blocking and stymieing these hearings and preventing witnesses from testifying, then isn't the next step? Doesn't it have to be opening an impeachment inquiry? And if Nancy, who didn't have the whatever you want to say to do that with Bush for having 1 million people die for lies in Iraq, we know that Maxine Waters or a different Democratic speaker would be willing to open an impeachment inquiry. So what do you think about that?
Right. Well, with regard to Bush, again, the Democrats should have been playing hardball. They should have had hearings and they should have had show trials on Bush's war crimes. And, they were just afraid or concerned about splitting the country. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi is, I think she's right that you can't just launch into impeachment without the American people realizing that there are crimes here. I think Donnie Deutsch is absolutely right in saying we need to stop using the word impeachment, and we need to start using the word Trump crimes, or the phrase Trump's crimes, or the Trump crime family. That's mine, not his. But we need to be talking about crimes. This guy, we have a criminal in the White House, and he got there through committing crimes, through campaign finance fraud. I mean, he's president because of crimes. But the fact of the matter is that the American people don't know that, by and large. I mean, there's a few million political junkies out there who watch, on the right Fox and on the left MSNBC or Free Speech TV. But outside of that, most Americans are just kind of, worried about their paychecks. They're not paying attention. So, Jeff, I think that the show trials need to begin, and they need to begin tomorrow morning or Monday morning. Jeff, thanks a lot for actually Congress comes back next week, so that's when they need to begin.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And if the Democrats can't get Republicans to come and testify, they need to get some good Democrats to come in and testify and speculate about what's going on. And welcome back. And let's see here, Debbie, watching us on Free Speech TV via Roku in Gresham, Oregon. Hey, Debbie, what's on your mind today?
Well, my subject was about the tail end of your show yesterday. I heard some talk about the antibiotic use. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that within the last year, against my will, I've become a little bit of an expert on that. For decades, people in our 50s, we've been eating foods with antibiotics in it for a long, long time. Well, last year, I had to take some antibiotics for something. And last May, I ended up in the back of an ambulance doing a midnight run to the hospital and near death because of it.
Because the antibiotics weren't working? You had an antibiotic-resistant infection?
Yes, it gave me the antibiotic. It was called C. diff. And because they kept me there for 17 days.
Oh, you got C. diff. Yeah, C. diff is Clostridium difficile, or however you say it. And it's a gut bacteria that has evolved in the guts of, I believe it's cows, might be pigs. But it's one of the farm animals, and it's antibiotic resistant, and it has now spread to people to the point where they're doing fecal transplants to deal with it because
that's exactly what they had to do because, like other people, I did not respond to their drug treatment. Right. And so far, so good. But everybody else with a transplant has to take drugs afterwards, as I do. But the pharmacies, my insurance will not cover the cost of my drugs. And
is that because the fecal transplant is considered experimental?
What?
Is that because the fecal transplant is considered experimental?
I don't think so. I think it's because the drug I have to take, it's a certain type of a probiotic. I can't have just any one.
Right.
And when I go to eat now, I have to be very careful about what foods and where I eat.
Sure.
And
so, Debbie, what's the bottom line point here that you want to? Did you have a question, or you just wanted to share your experience?
No, I just wanted to kind of finish up yesterday what I heard on the air, what you were talking about, because I understand. Now I have to take care of this for the rest of my life because this could come back.
Yeah, no, C. diff is nasty stuff.
And and there's only two places I can eat out now out here in the Gresham area. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of the places on your network.
Well, it wouldn't matter. People don't. You can say company names, but it doesn't.
Okay, it's Burgerville and Chipotle's. I mean, there might be another one on the way. I don't know.
Why are those the only places you can eat?
Because they don't have any meats with antibiotics in them.
Oh, so these are stores that use antibiotic-free meats. Well, you could also go vegan. You could stop eating meat altogether, Debbie.
Well, I could, and also I could tell everybody else that when you go to the doctor and they give you an antibiotic, look at your doctor and say, is this a C-dep-friendly antibiotic?
Right.
And that right there will make them change their prescription if it's not.
There you go. Debbie, thank you.
That
Thank you
might
for
help
sharing your
other
story.
people.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. This is a very real problem, and people are dying from this, from C. diff. And a lot of the other things associated with it. We'll be back. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick with me. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Tim in Aloha, Oregon. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, what I want to tell you kind of ties into that lunatic you were talking to, the Trump supporter that you basically couldn't stop making sense with. I mean, it's just amazing. But a really significant thing on MSNBC, I don't think a lot of people may have seen it. They had one of those Republican town halls based on a few Republicans wanting to impeach Trump, and they interviewed a gal, middle class and so forth. It was scary. She said that she listens to conservative media and that what the Mueller report did was vindicate Trump. You see what I mean?
Yeah, well,
now,
this has been the message that Fox News has been pushing ever since Bill Barr issued his first letter.
But the significance of it, think about that. These Rush Limbaugh and Fox News devotees, this is scary stuff. Because what may happen based on the way that the Republicans are stalling all the legal processes is this Mueller report may actually help him get reelected.
Well, at least the lies about it, the lies that Bill Barr is promoting, and he's going to be doing on CBS this weekend. Yeah, I'm with you, Tim. And what this proves is that Northwestern University study from about 6 or 7 years ago that found that viewers of Fox News are not only uninformed, they are misinformed.
Oh, absolutely.
That is to say, they believe things that are not true, whereas viewers of whether it's PBS or whether it's commercial television or whatever it may be, in some cases they're uninformed, but they are not misinformed. They don't believe things that are not true. Viewers of Fox News and people who listen to right-wing hate radio literally believe things that are not true. They are malinformed. Yeah,
and then one additional comment, the legal process is lie, cheat, steal, and appeal. That's basically what the Republicans are doing now. And as long as they can keep that intact, I don't know what's going to happen to this country.
Yeah, well, we have to have hearings in the House, and we have to expose this stuff. It's just that simple. Tim, thank you for the call. Well said and spot on. Paul in Taos, New Mexico. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. What do you think? I think these tax returns and the Democrats' inability to get them with a clear black and white law that they shall be given over.
Right.
If I don't think they'll ever get them. And my prediction is if they don't get those taxes, and if he's not impeached, he's reelected. And the fact that, I disagree with Nancy. I think the same corporate money that has her in power has Trump in power. I just think that's
I don't think that Nancy Pelosi is slow walking impeachment because she's concerned about corporate donors. Nancy Pelosi is slow walking impeachment because she's waiting for there to be a general threshold of agreement with the process across the United States. You look at the Nixon impeachment, you look at the Clinton impeachment. After Ken Starr's report came out, which is analogous in many ways to the Barr report or to the Mueller report. After Ken Starr's report came out, they released, literally physically a ton of paper that had the grand jury testimony, all this stuff. They released everything. This would be as if Mueller just released everything, not just a 400-page report, but tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages of documentation. They released all that. Starr's report came out, but within a week or two of Starr's report coming out, they threw this thing to the Senate for a vote. And there had not been time at that point for the American people to come to the conclusion that Bill Clinton should be impeached. On the other hand, in the case of the Nixon impeachment, there was 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks of hearings. And during that period of time, public opinion went from 19% to 67% about whether or not Nixon should be impeached. That's what Pelosi is doing, is she's trying to get public opinion up there. And that's only going to happen when the House of Representatives can hold these hearings. And they can only hold the hearings if people will show up and testify. And that's why Trump is preventing people from testifying aggressively. And so I think that the Democrats need to hold the hearings and bring forward some friendly witnesses.
Tom, can I push back a little bit on that?
Go for it.
Yeah. Listen, and just look at these as examples. Like Barack Obama, the whole process with Merrick Garland, and this is related. He goes to Orrin Hatch to ask, hey, who should I pick? And then they stonewall it anyway. He gave no fight whatsoever. I never hear Republicans talking about worrying about dividing the country with endless trials of Hillary Clinton.
If Bill Clinton said I'm not going to put I'm not going to put a Republican nominee on not Bill Clinton. If Nancy Pelosi had said, or whoever, no, Harry Reid. Harry Reid was running the Senate back then.
Harry Reid.
If Harry Reid had said, I'm not going to hold a hearing, Harry Reid himself would have been the subject of an impeachment hearing in the House of Representatives.
Absolutely. And listen, Harry Reid, there's another good example. Just these corporate Democrats, one after the other. How many handshakes did he get from Mitch McConnell? And then Mitch McConnell, throws sand in his face at the last minute, and then we start all over again. We just cannot. Corporate Democrats.
Well, I've got my own problems with corporate Democrats, Paul, but this is larger than that. It is that the Democratic Party has been interested in governing, and the Republican Party is interested in power. They don't give a rat's ass about governing. They don't care if they pass legislation. They don't care if they do things that help people. They just want the power, and they want the money that comes with the power, which is why they've got a billionaire at the top of their ticket. And Americans need to figure that out. But Paul, thank you for the call. But this is what's going on. Basically, is that the Republican Party is playing Game of Thrones, and the Democratic Party is playing, student government. And, it's time to take names and kick ass in a serious way. It's 27 minutes, coming up on 28 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where despair is not an option. And it's Anything Goes Friday. We'll be back with more of your calls right after this. Day 2 of our fund drive. It's Friday. It's our first Friday of our fund drive. Please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution to Free Speech TV. Help keep this network going, help keep this network alive, help keep this program on this network. All of these things are absolutely necessary if we're to move forward. Moving forward would be a nice thing. In fact, Free Speech TV just announced they're rolling out a new show, Lisa Gar's Aware Show. I was a guest on Lisa Gar's show, when we lived in Vermont,
like in 2003, 2004, right around that time. A number of times. In fact, I was on her show. She had me on as the author of books that I'd written. Does a great program, and is going to do a great job here on Free Speech TV. There's a lot. They have built out a lot of great programming. It's remarkable, and they've done it on this little tiny shoestring of a budget. The budget for this entire television network is less than the budget of any one of the 1-hour programs on MSNBC or CNN, for example. The entire network runs on this, relatively small budget, just a few $million. I think, I think it's in the neighborhood of around $4 million a year, which is, when you think about it, I mean, frighteningly small, and yet they pull it off. I mean, they really do, and we got it. We got Free Speech TV on Dish, and we got Free Speech TV on Direct, and we got Free Speech TV all over the internet, and you can watch these programs, and I mean, it's remarkable. We're in over 40 million homes directly through Dish and Direct, and theoretically in billions of homes via the internet. So Free Speech TV is really doing something, and doing something consequential. I mean, you get that from watching this show, right? When we take calls from listeners, and they're literally all over the country watching Free Speech TV. In fact, one of the cool things about Free Speech TV, if you're concerned about red states and you're concerned about the message getting through in areas where people are heavily watching Fox so-called news, or just, red state areas where there's very few progressives, in a lot of the rural areas in the United States, there is no cable TV because it's expensive to bring cable out to rural areas. And so the cable companies go, we'll not do that. And so people instead have Dish or Direct, the two cable systems, or the two satellite systems, excuse me. And the consequence of that is that they can get Free Speech TV, and in red areas, in red parts of red states. And that's why we get so many callers. It's one of the reasons why we get so many callers into this program from Oklahoma and Wyoming and Missouri and rural Idaho, and I mean, fill in the blank, right? Texas. Yeah, we have radio stations in a lot of those places, but well, not so much in the red states, actually. And it's because of Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV is having a big impact. Free Speech TV is actually changing political dialogue in the United States. And Free Speech TV needs your help and support right now. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the fair and slightly unbalanced, that's one of the slogans for our program, bumper sticker. With a $72 gift, you get an unautographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, my new book. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. With the slogan, "Democracy Begins With You." With a $500 gift, you have your choice. We're going to do an online virtual meet and greet. It'll be a invitation only to people who've donated $500 or more, and we will meet online, and I will answer your questions in real time. Or with a $500 gift, if you happen to be in the D.C. area on June the 10th, the hour before I do the book signing at Busboys and Poets, I will be doing a meet and greet just for our $500 donors in Washington, D.C. So that's also with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. We get people together every couple times a month, maybe, and it's neat. In fact, we've got some regulars who I've gotten to know and I really like, and it's a marvelous thing. I really enjoy it, and I think the people who come do too. And you get to sit in the studio and see how the program's done, and meet Nate and Sean and Joyce and Nick, and it's just a hoot. So those are the gifts, or the premiums, as it were. But the important thing is supporting a television network that is making change, a television network that is actually promoting a relatively unadulterated progressive perspective. Nobody owns this network. Nobody owns the shows on this network beyond the individual hosts. There's not some giant corporation in the wings or some government that owns the whole thing. It's exactly what you see. 2014 through July 2014, the groups. I may be coming to your city soon on our book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. I'll be in New York, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Here I come. More information is available at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's Anything Goes Friday. Maine in Chicago. Hey, Maine, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good. What's up?
I was just it's more like comments than it's like, we've seen $3 trillion go to the top since Reagan. He sent $1.5 trillion to the top, and now Trump has did that. And so now $3 trillion has gone to the top for this trickle-down economy.
Yeah.
We have to get candidates and stuff in there who will say we will no longer trickle down. And if you don't say the words, then it's not recognized. It's just like here in Chicago, the west and south sides have been redlined since 68, 51 years. And now we have this new mayor, Lightfoot, the black female mayor.
Right.
And I'm going to see if she going to actually say the words. They said the words, we are redlining the west and south sides. So you have to say the words, we are lifting the red lining up the west and south side.
Right, or breaking it, yeah.
Right, and we have to say we will no longer, we have to have candidates and representatives up there that say, we are no longer going to go with trickle-down economics. It hasn't worked for 49 years, and so we have to have these type of candidates who have the kahunas or the ovaries who will say these things and getting rid of the electoral college. That's why we're in this thing. That's one of the holdovers from the days of slavery. Yeah. If we can get rid of that and have a true democracy, one man, one woman, one vote, Trump wouldn't be in there. You have to remember, she beat him by 3 million votes. In perspective, that's like the size of the city of Chicago.
Yeah, well, that's larger than the population of half a dozen states.
Right.
It's like,
okay, there you go.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Maine. It's time to get rid of the Electoral College, absolutely. And Democrats are working on that, but it's still got a ways to go. And ending trickle-down economics, spot on. And I also agree with you that we need to start pointing that out. That these have been Republican policies since Reagan. Actually, they go back to Warren Harding, but in the modern era, they've been Republican policies since Reagan, and they don't work. In fact, they damage people, they destroy people. Maine, thanks a lot for the call. Always nice to hear from you. Norma in Montgomery, Alabama. Hey, Norma, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Dr. Tom. I have been thinking about this problem with Nancy playing, like you said, student government. Mm-hmm. And if she's not careful, you could wind up having a population playing Hunger Games against this crown of thorns.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't understand that when you have corporate people, not just in the House, but in the Senate, there are billions of dollars involved. Because if you stop and you look at the banks, the energy sources, water sources, communication sources, everything that we need, use, and touch is no longer an American-owned company. It's no longer an American product. And so whatever profit there is from anything and everything we use goes to an international corporation, and you're talking about billions of dollars leaving the United States every day,
yes,
going into an international bank or an international account. Because these corporations, the things we grew up with, our cereals, our soups, our mac and cheese, our telephone, these companies are no longer 100% American-owned. And until we get these things back under control in the United States, I don't see how the country is going to recover. Because you think about what Walmart's going to do. They're passing the tariffs on to the customers. So this is not, instead they should be, I think in my opinion, Walmart should eat it instead of passing it on to us. They have destroyed our private businesses. They have destroyed the middle class. And to pass these tariffs on to people is wrong. And, it's just like, it does not matter what you need, whether it's housing, transportation, communications, lights, power, water, natural gas. These are things that are now internationally owned. These resources that we depended on as U.S. citizens are not ours.
Yep. And then you get these, Trumpies, these maggots who, come into a bar or restaurant and go, yeah, I'm an all-American guy. Give me a Budweiser. Not realizing that it's owned by a Belgian company.
Well, Budweiser is actually owned by Japan.
Oh, it is? Okay, I thought it was Belgium. But it's still,
no,
it's okay,
Jim
thank
Beam, the bourbon out of Kentucky is also owned by Japan.
Amazing.
And, so...
And that's what happens when you have a trade deficit. And the thing is, Democrats in the 70s and 80s were talking about this stuff. I mean, aggressively talking about this stuff. And that's when Donald Trump was a Democrat. And that's when he came to understand how immigration and trade are really both jobs issues for American working people. He understands that. And he's completely gone against Republican orthodoxy in taking on trade and immigration in the way that he has. And he's taking old Democratic positions, and the Democrats don't know what to do.
Yeah, you see, that's just it. You see, as long as you have a Congress, whether it's the Democratic House or the Republican Senate, that obeys these corporations, because that is where their money is. You look at the House. They just voted themselves money out of agricultural bill because they own the farms. Yeah, and so they gave them, this is a conflict of interest for them to vote on this, because they're giving themselves billions of dollars because of either a drought, a flood, or the trade. China won't buy their stuff now.
Right.
And this is the Congress is feathering their own nest in everything they do. And as long as they have power to do this, we have no power as the people. Yeah. And this is why, like you say, get out there and run for office.
Yeah, amen. And this is why we need to undo the Buckley decision of 1976 and Citizens United that followed it.
And we need to undo the Powell memo.
Yes, amen, amen. Norma, thank you for the call. You're always right to the point. I really appreciate it. Russ in Jefferson, Wisconsin. Hey, Russ, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
A little nervous here. I've never called in before. But, as far as the impeachment of Trump, the ingredients are already there. I mean, that cake has been baked. And I trust and believe in Nancy Pelosi that things will come out when the time is right. I don't think she's going to jump into it too soon and give Trump the advantage of that. I think our bigger problem is getting rid of Mitch McConnell. I mean, he did not let President Obama have even a hearing on Merrick Garland, and everybody knows he would have flew through the Senate, but he did not want him to seat Merrick Garland.
Right.
And he just came out the other night, and he was asked the question, what would happen in the last year of a Trump presidency if he was given the opportunity to seat a member of the Supreme Court? And McConnell came out and he said that he would seat him.
Yeah, he said, I'll fill the seat. That was his exact phrase.
Right.
You're right, Russ, and Mitch McConnell has been ruining our country, and he's been doing it for partisan gain. Mitch McConnell is a craven, basically tool of the billionaire class. I mean, he married hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's doing very well. Thank you very much. But yeah,
right. You're totally right there. But how many bills has the House passed?
There are over 100 pieces of legislation right now sitting in the Senate awaiting action.
About it.
I know.
You never hear about it. It's never brought up on any programs. I mean, just bring it up. I mean, daily. Yep. If this would have been something the Republicans, every day you would have seen McConnell with his four stooges alongside of him sitting there and bringing it up, and we don't see that.
Oh, and there should be a clock, like the debt clock. You know, how many days has it been since the House passed a piece of legislation that Mitch McConnell won't take up in the Senate? There is so much opportunity for political theater here, and I just wish the Democrats would grab it. I'm with you, Russ.
Absolutely.
Russ, thank you very much for the call. Spot on. Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick, what's on your mind today?
Well, I wanted you to address an issue and a cottage industry that's been bugging the hell out of me. But before I get to that, I just thinking about the times we're living in right now. I think we're like a sneeze away from living in Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And I mean,
people in Missouri will be.
Yeah. Well, and
today,
you've got. I'm 56, and I read a lot of this stuff in high school. But you have Margaret Atwood's *Handmaid's Tale*. You have Huxley's *Brave New World*, Orwell's *1984*. These were meant, as I understood them, to be satirical sci-fi cautionary tales, and the Republicans, since at least Bush Cheney, have been using them as blueprints.
Yeah, and don't forget, It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis. That is the Donald Trump book.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. I feel like George Orwell probably ruined my life from ninth grade on. The personal library I've been accumulating over the last 35 years, part of it is because I feel like I'm, in my own little way, Winston Smith, and in a worst-case nightmare scenario, I'm trying to save all of this from getting sucked down the memory hole. I'm a current events junkie, and so I've been buying up most of the books on Trump because it's part of the historical record, even the bat crap, crazy, lunacy nonsense. And I wanted to know what your take was on this part of this cottage industry of the Trump support base. I've got like a dozen books on that Trump was chosen by God and prophesied in the book of Daniel.
Right.
I've got Trump prophecy.
The Cyrus presidency is what they're calling him. They're calling him King Cyrus.
Yeah, God and Donald Trump, Bible prophecy and Trump. I'm just holding a few of them in my hands. My deceased mom was an evangelical Republican. My sister is. I don't even have the courage to ask whether she voted for or supports Trump. I don't know if I want to know. But I wanted to know what your take was on these, the fact that millions of Americans in the evangelical community have basically put all of their belief system on the shelf and think, believe that Trump was chosen by God. I wanted to know what your take was on that. And also, there's two writers I wanted to know if you think we should be leery of, Wayne Madsen and F. William Engdahl. I can't figure out if they're trustworthy or should be taken with a grain of salt.
I've seen some of Wayne's stuff. I don't know enough about either one of them to have an opinion. But with regard to the evangelicals, up until the 1980s or the late 1970s, the evangelicals were all in favor of a woman's right to choose to have an abortion and birth control. No problem. And the evangelical movement...
You're talking about Frank Schaeffer.
Oh, yeah.
And his dad.
And the evangelical movement flipped in the late 70s, and Reagan picked them up, and they flipped mostly on abortion. And Reagan picked them up, and it's really about power. I think Billy Graham himself was very, very conflicted about this. I always had respect for Billy Graham. But although now that I've heard him on the Nixon tapes, I'm not there anymore. But in any case, his son, Franklin Graham, is very much like Jerry Falwell and Jerry Falwell Jr. Jerry Falwell is deceased, just like Billy Graham is now. But these people are just craven, power-drunk, money-drunk. They are the people that we were warned about in the fourth chapter of 1 John. I mean, these are the people, and in Revelations, beware of the false prophets. I mean, that's who we've got now, and they're doing it for money and power. It's just that simple in most cases, and then they get a bunch of well-intentioned people who think abortion is murder and et cetera, and get them following them, and then they turn this into a political thing where people have been killed over this.
Would you consider yourself, Tom, a Christian along the lines of Kierkegaard and Merton?
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas Merton is one of my absolute favorites. The Little Flowers of Zen is, I think, the best book he ever wrote. Patrick, thank you for the call. Yeah, I absolutely consider myself a Christian, and I don't think that these people are, frankly.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's Anything Goes Friday. And welcome back. Ginger in White Swan, Washington. Hey, Ginger, what's on your mind today?
Hi. Hi, Tom. Thanks for being there. And it's Seattle, not White Swan, but that's okay.
Okay.
What a day it has been with you. You've had incredible callers. I have learned so much. And if I was a teacher, I'd give you a gold star for...
Thank you, Ginger.
For noting that we have one party that's into power and one party that's into governing. That's so absolutely spot on. Anyway, I am worried, like back at the ranch kind of thing, like what's going on at the White House. I know we've got a lot of legislature that's just sitting around, but nobody's talking about or doing anything about anything except what Trump wants to run on and some war stuff, that we may have a war. That's about all I hear. What's happening to the medical thing and all of the stuff they want to take away? Are they going to wait until he gets elected again and then take that stuff away? I mean, they know it's going to go.
You're talking about the death knell of Obamacare? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about all of the things for Americans that we're not doing anything
like
about.
Medicare,
like
Medicaid, stuff like
exactly.
that. Yeah, infrastructure.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah. I don't hear anything about any of it anymore. I know Trump wants to wait for the medical thing until he gets reelected. Then he'll have a nice plan.
Yeah.
But not until then.
I don't think he'll ever have a plan because he hooked his wagon to the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is only loyal to money. It's just that simple because they know that without billionaire support, they wouldn't have a snowball's chance in hell of having any political power.
Exactly right. So what can we do about these things we're not doing anything about, hearing anything about, or getting any information about from the Democrats as to what they're trying to do, maybe, or not? I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I think the Democratic Party needs to tighten and refine their messaging. But, I can sit around and say that all day long, and it's not probably going to change anything. I think the other thing is that at the level of individuals, Ginger, you and I, what we need to be doing is talking to our friends, talking to our neighbors, talking to our relatives. If politics becomes a sore issue, then we say, okay, well, we'll just agree not to talk about politics. But to the extent that there are people who can be educated and who can be awakened, we need to all be doing that. Because, if we just sit around and wait for Nancy Pelosi to save our lives or save our body politic or whatever, she's not going to do it. No politician is going to do it until there's just overwhelming pressure from their own base. And so we need to be expanding the base, and we need to be waking up friends and neighbors and relatives. And there's a lot of great progressive media out there, by the way, that talks about these kind of issues on a regular basis that we need to be telling our friends about too. So, I think one of the most effective things that every single person who's listening to me or watching me right now can do is turn 2 or 3 people onto Free Speech TV or onto whatever station they're listening to, or YouTube, or however they're getting this show, whatever it may be, and say, hey, look at this. There's a program here, and I'm not just talking about the Thom Hartmann program. There's a bunch of them. There's some very good programming out there. Stephanie Miller, Randy Rhodes, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a program that you should check out. Spread the word.
Yes,
I don't know
what you're saying. I'm losing friends to Trump, so I'm not having success with my trying to do that stuff.
That's a tough one, Ginger. We're just going to have to, hunker down and live through this and do the very best we can. I don't have a magic solution, unfortunately. Ginger, thank you for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Brad in Woodlake, Virginia. Hey, Brad, it says you disagree with me. What's up?
Oh, I think one thing I agree with you on, I think Trump is a cancer to our country. I just wanted to comment on the one caller who said that the Republicans are ignoring legislation from the House. And I just saying that it's both parties that do that, because when the Republicans had the House and the Democrats had the Senate and the White House, they just sat on all the legislation that the House passed over too. Nothing's being done for both sides, and this is more, to me, it's just more about Democrat, Republican, because I'm a Republican, but I also have compassion for people. I do a lot of work Over the last 4 years, I've donated 100 computers that I refixed, but it's nothing is getting done for any of us.
Yeah. Brad, you know, the Democrats in this session just recently have passed bills to expand health care. They passed a bill to get money out of politics. They passed a bill to stop the revolving door with lobbyists. They passed legislation to clean up our election, you know, to strengthen our election infrastructure. All of these things, as you correctly point out, Mitch McConnell is refusing to take up in the Senate. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There was legislation passed by the Republican House that died in Harry Reid's Senate. The legislation that I remember it was bizarre stuff. It was legislation to undo Obamacare. It was legislation to well, let me flip this around. Brad, can you identify any single piece of legislation that the Republican Party, with majority Republican votes, got out of the Republican House of Representatives that died in Harry Reid's Senate, and that piece of legislation's principal goal was to help the average American? Can you identify one piece of legislation?
Well, to me, the Affordable Care Act needed something majorly done to it because it also hurt a lot of people. I worked for a school. They gave us part-time insurance benefits, and at the time, I had probably over a dozen operations in 3 years. And one of the schools I was working for, teaching for them, because that policy didn't meet the certain minimums, it was covering me up to $10,000
no,
a year.
I get that, Brad. There were winners and losers in Obamacare, and I'm, you know, right. but that's not that was not my question. My question was, can you, in fact, let me broaden the scope a little bit. Can you, in the last 50 years, name one piece of legislation that has been passed into law that was originated with Republicans and passed by Republicans whose principal beneficiary was the average working American rather than the billionaire class? Can you name one piece of legislation in the last 50 years?
The tax cuts that went through, my wife and I take home an extra $500 or $600 a month from that.
So you're really happy that Donald Trump borrowed, in your name, $1.5 trillion and gave 83% of it to billionaires, and you're happy that your taxes went down, but all of the rest of us, our debt went up, and of course you're going to have to pay the interest on that debt. So you think that that's something that benefits average Americans? That seems to me like a very, very weak soup here, Brad. Can't you come up with something that's actually helping working people, not just helping the billionaires? I said the principal recipients, the principal beneficiaries are not the billionaires, but are the average American. You know, the principal beneficiaries of the tax cut were the billionaires. One piece of legislation from the Republican Party in the last 50 years. Please name it.
I just did. It's more money in my pocket. My wife and I.
It did not principally benefit working people, Brad. You might be a billionaire, you might whatever. It doesn't matter. It didn't principally benefit working people. One piece of legislation, please, in 50 years.
I'm giving you two. Next time taxes.
I'm listening. Well, I can't hear now. I don't know what happened. Brad's phone faded out or something. Anyhow. Thanks so much for being with us today. Fascinating day, and thank God we got our phones working. We'll be back on Monday, same time, same place, rolling along. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not something that we just sit around and wait for. It's not something that we just, is going to magically happen. It actually requires you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Take good care of yourself.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.